Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. I'm a Saiyan and you're saying that I don't have any bloodline limits. Chapter 81. Konoha's Blue Beast, Metkai, and the Eight Gates Dungeon are nothing more than that. Obito had a kunai in his hand at some point, and stabbed Kai's head fiercely, trying to make Kai's blood splash on the spot. With the sixth gate of view open, Metkai has a particularly clear perception of what is happening around him. He did not start the next step immediately, but waited for the masked man's kunai to stab his head. As everyone watched this scene, their palms began to sweat involuntarily, their eyes widened, and their hearts raised in their throats. Kai, run away. Kakashi saw that the masked man's kunai had penetrated Kai's head, and he shouted anxiously. Farewell, Metkai. A smile appeared at the corner of Obito's mouth, as if he had a chance to win. He seemed to have seen the way Metkai's head was cut in half by a kunai. Just as the kunai continued to move forward with fierce strength and speed, Metkai's body suddenly disappeared. Time and space ninjutsu. Obito realized the danger at this moment. Fourth Hokage Namikaze Minato beat him, and the scene of Yifan beating him came to mind. No, I have to weaken my body immediately. Obito immediately activates Kamui. But before he could release Kamui, he felt a hard punch on his waist. This punch generated a large amount of flames due to friction in the air, almost cutting Obito in half and breaking him into pieces. Boom! There was a loud noise, and the ground with Metkai as the center shattered in all directions, sand and rocks flew, and all the houses within 100 meters collapsed. Hit! Kakashi exclaimed, with surprise in his eyes. Seeing this scene, other people also became very excited and cheered. Hyuga Neji's body was trembling slightly, and he remembered what Yifan once said to him. Your teacher Kai's strength is far beyond your imagination. You can't even imagine how strong he is. It turns out that Yifan didn't lie to me. The enemy who has left so many people helpless, teacher Kai has his own way. Neji lost consciousness for a while, so what he said, wasn't he lying to me? Father him. At this moment, Ningqi's heart was full of questions. At this moment, he wanted to see Mark so much. He wanted to question him face to face. Ask Yifan where he knew these things and if he could tell him more details. Kai, be careful, the masked man is not dead yet. Hyuga Hiyashi's shout pulled Neji out of his thoughts. When he opened his Byakugan and looked into the dust, he was shocked by the strong chakra fluctuations. What kind of monster is this? How can such a level of power exist in this world? A cool breeze blew by, blowing away the dust in the sky. The scene in front of them gave everyone a chill, it was so shocking. A behemoth with dark blue light all over its body is so eye-catching under the night, constantly releasing pressure on the surroundings, shocking everyone's hearts. They had never seen this kind of ninjutsu, and this level of ninjutsu made them despair. Is Konoha going to end this time? Facing this level of ninjutsu, can they really resist it? Is the Hidden Leaf Village about to come to an end and disappear from the entire ninja world? The eyes of the villagers who were evacuated to a distance were wide open, fear and despair welling up in their hearts. Staring at the behemoth in the distance, they couldn't see any hope. Uchiha Sasuke was lying in the hospital, looking at Sakura with shock and fear on her face, and felt an ominous premonition in her heart. Sakura, what's wrong? What happened outside? Sakura was trembling all over and did not answer Sasuke's question. She was completely confused. Sakura, what happened outside? Sasuke yelled. Sakura turned around slowly and tremblingly, and stammered to Sasuke. Outside, a huge thing appeared. It was a ninjutsu we have never seen before. What? Help me go over and take a look. Sasuke's tone was a little anxious. He only heard loud noises all the time. Due to his body and reason, he didn't see anything at all. Ah, good. Sakura quickly helped Sasuke to the window. The first time Sasuke saw Susanoo, he was so surprised that he couldn't speak, and his lips were trembling up and down. What kind of monster is this? How can such a level of power exist in this world? Sasuke stared at the situation on the battlefield, with deep fear creeping into his heart. In the dark blue Susanoo, Uchiha Obito felt this newly acquired power, with a smile on his face. Is this the power of Susanoo? It's too strong. This feeling is so wonderful. After entering this mode, Obito clearly feels that his abilities have been greatly improved. The powerful power gave him the illusion that he could move mountains and reclaim seas. Is this the ninjutsu who blocked my full blow? Metkai squinted his eyes and looked at Susanoo. Just now, he clearly felt that his fist hit something similar to a bone. I was wondering what it was, but when I saw it I thought it was so incredible. Now we are in trouble. Metkai looked extremely solemn and shouted, "Everyone, quickly take the villagers and run away." When the masked man heard this, he was very disdainful, "Want to escape? Don't you think this sentence is ridiculous?" Obito twisted his neck and laughed. "I, Uchiha Madara, officially declare war on Konoha today. The first step to peace, destroy Konoha." Obito's voice echoed in every corner of Konoha and lingered for a long time. Most people who heard this sentence were frightened and trembled. What makes them even more frightened is the name of Uchiha Madara. This name can be described as a nightmare for many people. At this moment, not many people doubt the identity of the masked man. In their opinion, only Uchiha Madara can possess that level of power. Madara, he is Uchiha Madara. In the hospital, Sasuke swallowed silently. Although it feels a little impossible, it seems like it should be so. He really couldn't think of anyone else besides Madara who could possess this level of power. He is going to destroy Konoha. Sakura was so frightened that she collapsed on the ground, shaking even more violently, fear filling her mind. "Naruto, where are you? Come back and save us. Yi-fan, if he is here, he will definitely save us. Naruto, Yi-fan, where have you been? Come back quickly." Sakura cried uncontrollably and kept mumbling the names of Naruto and Mark, hoping that they would show up soon to save Konoha and save her. "Metkai, let me see how you hit me this time." Obito sneered and sarcastically moved his left eye slightly. The surrounding houses and the ground all collapsed, like the end of the world. "Neji, get out of here quickly." Metkai stood on a broken roof, surrounded by countless debris. He turned around and smiled, showing his white teeth, still so confident. Looking at the complete Susanoo and looking at the ruined Konoha, Kai already had his own decision in his heart. "Teacher Kai, please leave too, we can't be his opponent." Neji shouted. Metkai shook his head. "Ningji, you are in your youth, you must cherish the time and work hard to shine with the brilliance of youth. The future is yours, and it's time for me to blossom into my youthful glory. After Lee comes back, tell him for me that I think highly of him, just as I think highly of you." Quote. Teacher Kai. Neji vaguely felt something from his words. "Let's go, Neji." Metkai waved his hand, and a strong wind swept away, taking Hyuga Ningji away. Immediately, he turned around and looked at Susanoo, his eyes becoming deep and firm. "Metkai, use whatever moves you have, and let me see if the proud blue beast can warm me up." Uchiha Obito stood on Susanoo's head and mocked with disdain. Having just gained extraordinary strength, he didn't even look at anyone except Mark. In his eyes, only Mark was his opponent, and he didn't take it to heart, including Uchiha Itachi. Hearing this, Metkai did not make any rebuttal, but silently clenched his fists. Towards the peacock, Metkai jumped up, his whole body covered in fire, and countless fireballs continued to attack Susanoo. Obito looked at this level of attack, his eyes filled with deep disdain, and stood motionless, letting the successive fireballs attack him. Just as he thought, Metkai's peacock could not cause any harm to him at all, not even scratching it. Does Konoha's blue beast only have this little ability? Uchiha Obito laughed, he really liked this new power now. After getting another Sharingan, he got a new life. The peacock cannot cause any harm to the complete Susanoo, which is also expected by Metkai. Is that really true? Metkai whispered. The chakra in his body surged wildly, he crossed his hands in front of his head and waved suddenly. 8 gates Dunjia, the 7th gate of wonder, open. Metkai shouted loudly, and all the chakra in his body burst out at this moment, and light blue light enveloped his whole body. Oh, the power has increased again. Obito smiled slightly, but still didn't take it to heart. Hitora. Metkai didn't pay attention to the masked man's eyes and yelled. In an instant, a burst of white light flashed through, seeming to light up the entire night sky, as if it were daytime. A huge amount of chakra formed a huge, white tiger-shaped shadow, shining between the sky and the earth. Boom! Accompanied by a deafening loud noise, the huge white tiger phantom rushed towards Susanoo at an extremely fast speed, covering it entirely. Bring it on. Obito did not choose blurring, but chose hard connection. Johu's incomparable power made him feel so excited. Obito was ecstatic to have such a powerful opponent while possessing great power. Drink. Metkai punched out, and the huge white tiger shadow seemed to swallow up Susanoo. The extremely powerful force made Susanoo keep retreating, and 2 deep ravines were opened on the ground. He did not stop until he smashed the city wall and left the scope of Konoha. In the village, people watching this scene were astonished as never before. They couldn't believe that the man who usually looked a little immoral and talked about his youth all day long could be so strong. Even Sakura, who had always looked down on him from the bottom of her heart, now felt that Metkai was so reliable and handsome. Teacher Kai. Ninki looked at this scene with extremely complicated emotions. He had always thought that the Zong family had given up on him. Only at this moment did he realize that the Zong family had not given up on him, but had indeed chosen a good teacher for him. It's great, Metkai, your strength is beyond my imagination. Obito laughed heartily, feeling so hearty. Come on, let me see all your strength. Metkai, keep making moves. The slightly broken Susanoo skin returned to its original state in an instant. Metkai looked at the behemoth with a pair of wings not far away, his eyes darkened, and he remembered what his father said to him before he died. You are already an excellent ninja, but you must exercise strict self-restraint before using this move. Metkai glanced at the ruins of Konoha village behind him and murmured, Father, now is the time to protect your most important thing even to the death. Turning his eyes, his extremely firm eyes fell on the masked man. Facing this gaze, Obito suddenly felt an inexplicable feeling. The proud blue beast of Konoha has disappeared from now on, and it is time to transform into a red beast. 8 Gates Dungia Formation, 8th Gates, Gate of Death, open. Metkai shouted loudly, and the light blue light surrounding his body gradually turned into red steam. That is the red light produced by burning blood and life. The surrounding temperature dropped to freezing point at this moment, and seemed to completely turn into a vacuum zone. The clothes moved automatically without wind, and a strong sense of oppression swept across all directions. Even the Konoha ninjas who were far away could clearly feel the terrifying oppression from Metkai. This chakra is worthy of being the last gate of the 8 Gates Dungia, the Gate of Death. In Susanoo, Obito also clearly felt the terrifying aura. Feeling the pressure, Heizetsu frowned and quickly reminded him through the ring, Obito, be careful. Obito nodded, flapped his wings, and slowly rose up, holding several huge shurikens in his huge arms. Facing this power, even Obito, who had activated his full Susanoo, did not dare to look down upon him. Kamui Shuriken. Obito was the first to attack, and the shuriken disappeared the moment it was thrown, and appeared in front of Metkai from a different space in the blink of an eye. In this state, Metkai's perception is extraordinary, and even the Kamui Shuriken cannot attack him. However, he did not choose to evade, but took the initiative to attack. Shishyong. Metkai roared, and the terrifying aura above the red steam directly shattered the Kamui Shuriken into pieces. 1 foot. Metkai's figure suddenly appeared in front of Susanoo and kicked him hundreds of meters away. Susanoo, whose defense was extremely strong, also broke several cracks at this moment. Obito's face changed drastically and he was very shocked. Before he could react, Metkai's figure once again blocked his retreat. 2 feet, 3 feet, Shizu, Wuzu. A series of strong attacks directly shattered Obito's Susanoo. After one set of combos, not a single blade of grass will grow within a kilometer radius. Metkai's body also suffered a huge load, and at this moment, more than half of the bones in his body were broken. Cough cough cough. Obito half knelt on the ground, coughing violently and spitting out blood. He felt that his ribs were almost broken. Metkai put his hands on the ground, and his eyes were filled with red blood steam. The last moment of life is the climax of youth. I never regret my youth. Kakashi, this script was originally reserved for you, Ye Kai. In an instant, a large amount of blood steam rose into the sky, forming a huge red dragon head, which looked extremely heart-stopping. The red faucet looks so dazzling under the night sky. The turbulent and majestic atmosphere quickly filled and swept across, the wind roared, and countless trees and the earth collapsed at this moment. Space, is actually distorted. Obito was shocked and his expression of surprise could no longer be described in words. Black Zetsu saw this scene and shouted, "Obito, run away. Run. I want to run too, but the key is that I can't run." Obito's blur speed cannot keep up with Metkai's speed. Before he could completely enter the virtual state, a huge red dragon exuding a majestic aura had already arrived in front of him. Ah! Puff! Before Metkai's attack could hit the masked man felt that 2/3 of the bones in his whole body were shattered. Hurry up! Hurry up! Uchiha Obito uses all his strength to activate his right eye, and uses the power of his left eye to interfere with Metkai's attack. The space was distorting everywhere, but it could not affect Metkai in the slightest. Metkai still carried unparalleled power and rushed to the masked man. In an instant, sand and rocks were flying, smoke filled the air, and the ground collapsed. Yikai! A shocking and powerful voice sounded, and the red dragon drowned the masked man. The masked man's body didn't have time to fade away, and turned into dust in the blink of an eye, disappearing into the world with the wind. Cough! With all his meridians broken, all his bones shattered, and without an inch of good skin on his body, Metkai coughed dryly and fell to the ground. The blood all over his body has been evaporated, and even coughing up a mouthful of old blood is a luxury. Looking at the place where the masked man disappeared, Metkai showed a happy smile. Finally, he used his own power to protect Konoha. Although the result was the cost of his life, Metkai had no regrets. Kakashi, my lifelong enemy. Ningji, Tiantian, Shaoli, my disciples. You need to walk the next road by yourself. I can no longer accompany you or protect you. Father, now that things have happened, I finally understand what you said before you died. The proud blue beast of Konoha has come to a close today. This is my youth. After saying this, Metkai's pupils lost their luster, turned white, dilated, and completely lifeless. On his deathbed, Metkai still had a smile on his lips, and the place where his dilated pupils looked was also the Hidden Leaf Village. Cough cough cough, puff. Behind a huge stone, Uchiha Obito spit out a mouthful of blood and stared at the lifeless Metkai lying on the ground with lingering fear. Metkai's 8 gates Dunjia really shocked him. Over the years, among all the people he has met, Metkai has the most powerful physical skills. Obito felt that the physical skills that Metkai showed just now were much better than Yifan. Susanoo was as weak as paper in front of Metkai. To this day, Obito still remembers the scene when Metkai kicked Susanoo to pieces. Thinking of Metkai's kick, the hairs all over Obito's body stood up involuntarily. Just now, I really almost died. Metkai's speed was so fast that even Kamui didn't have time to use it. If he hadn't used the forbidden technique of the Uchiha clan at the last moment, Izanagi would really be in trouble today. Even with the use of Izanagi, Obito only dared to appear quietly after Metkai died completely. Metkai, you are so strong. Among the taijutsu I have seen, I, Uchiha Obito, would like to call you the strongest. The masked man glanced at Metkai's body through the gaps between the stones, his expression pale and weak. Looking at the lifeless Metkai now, he still felt horrified and his heart was palpitating. Let's go, Obito, all the ninjas from Konoha are out. Heiju didn't know when he appeared behind the masked man and whispered. Heizi followed Obito's gaze and his cheeks, which were already as dark as the bottom of a pot, became even darker. Having lived in this world for thousands of years, I have seen countless strong men. However, when it comes to physical skills alone, Metkai is the strongest among all the people he has ever seen. Well, let's go. Obito nodded and vomited a few more mouthfuls of blood as he spoke. This battle caused him to suffer a lot of internal injuries, which were no less serious than the last time he fought Yifan. Kamui activates, and the bodies of Uchiha Obito and Black Zetsu gradually dissipate. Obito, fortunately you transplanted more than a dozen pairs of Sharingan in advance to prevent you from meeting Yifan. Otherwise, the double Kamui eyes would not be preserved. Heiju said. Yeah, I didn't expect that Metkai, who just plays ninjutsu and doesn't have any blood inheritance limit, can be so strong. Obito, what are you going to do next? Black Zetsu asked. When the masked man heard this question, he fell into deep thought, and then said after a while. After you recover from your injuries, let's go to the rain-hidden village first to see if Nagato has left any treasures, and also see if there is any way to get the Rinnegan eye back. Heiju smiled and said, with your current strength, it shouldn't be a problem to get the Samsara eye. Huh, what do you mean? In the Kamui's face, Obito glanced at Black Zetsu, a little confused. The Samsara eye is in Yifan's hand, and Obito can still clearly understand how much his own strength weighs. Even now that he has double Kamui, Obito still feels that he cannot defeat Yifan. The scene where Yifan blew up the ghetto statue, the body of 10 Tails, was still vivid in his mind. Black Zetsu looked at Obito's expression, understood what he was thinking, and smiled. When we went to Konoha, I left an eye in the Hidden Rain village. The Rinnegan eye is now in the hands of Uchiha Itachi, so I said it shouldn't be a big problem for you. Oh, Obito smiled brightly when he heard this. If that's the case, then it's easy to handle. If the Samsara eye is in Yifan's hands, Obito has no chance of grabbing it. But if it's in Uchiha Itachi's hands, it doesn't seem to be that difficult. After I recover from my injury, let's go get the Samsara eye back. Obito's eyes darkened and he had a bold idea. What kind of changes would happen if there were double Kamui, double Samsara eyes, and more than 20 Izanagi? What would it be like to face Yifan? Outside the Hidden Leaf village, a group of people surrounded Metkai's body. The atmosphere was unusually solemn, and everyone's face was filled with sadness. Hyuga Neji and Tenten knelt in front of the corpse and cried bitterly. Hyuga Neji, who was usually extremely cold and aloof, couldn't hold himself together at this moment. Bits and pieces of the past kept coming to mind, and the tears couldn't stop flowing, pattering on the rocks. Teacher Kai, don't worry, we will take care of ourselves, and we will protect Konoha. Nechi choked with sobs. Teacher Kai, Tiantian couldn't bear the blow and fainted. When Nechi saw this, he quickly hugged Tenten. When Tenten fainted in Neji's arms, he was still crying. Kakashi let out a long sigh, his expression behind the mask no one could tell. Metkai was his only friend, and now his only friend was gone. After a long silence, Kakashi endured the pain of losing his eye, picked up Metkai, and returned to Konoha. Although he already knew that Metkai was dead, Kakashi still couldn't believe it and sent him to Konoha Hospital. The hospital was crowded with people, but when they saw Kakashi coming with Metkai in his arms, they all spontaneously made way for him. They all knew that it was the man in Kakashi's arms who saved Konoha. If it weren't for that man's existence, Konoha would have been destroyed and blood would flow into the river. In the corridor, Sakura supported Sasuke and her eyes fell on Metkai. Sakura breathed a sigh of relief and was saved. Sasuke's face turned pale and he was extremely shocked. Uchiha Madara, is this the end? I didn't expect that Kai's teacher was so powerful. Sasuke secretly muttered in his heart. Sasuke remembers that move of Yekai vividly. That huge red dragon seemed to cut through the night sky and divide the entire world into two halves. It was really eye-catching and amazing. When the medical team saw Metkai come back, they hurriedly sent him to the emergency room even though they could see at a glance that he had no life breath. The red sun jumps out of the horizon, and the fiery red sun shines on the earth like layers of mist, bringing endless vitality and hope to people. The morning glow shone on the riddled Konoha village, and everyone bathed in the sunshine. Their gloomy mood became much happier. After Zui's big change, they realized how strong Konoha village was, and the desire to become stronger filled everyone's hearts. Outside Amegakure village, Kankuro and Tamari were hiding with a dozen Jonin from Sunagakure village. Everyone, please be careful. According to the clues, Gaara was dragged into the Hidden Rain village. Captain, are you sure you didn't go the wrong way? Why do I feel that we have not entered the territory of Yuyin village at all? A Jonin whispered. Tamari glanced at the cloudless and sunny village, and frowned slightly. She also suspected they were in the wrong place. According to intelligence, Yuyin village is subject to drizzle all year round. It is impossible to have a cloudless situation like today. Moreover, although they were a little far away from the village, they could still clearly see the village in front of them, with ruins everywhere. Although Yuyin village is not a big village, it cannot look like this. Kankuro observed the surrounding environment, feeling a little confused, and once again used the secret method to confirm. There's nothing wrong. The last location where Gaara's aura appeared was the Hidden Rain Village, and we didn't go the wrong way at all. This is strange. Could it be that Gaara-sama went berserk and destroyed the Hidden Rain Village? That's why it turned out like this. Ajanan analyzed. That can't be the case. Temari shook his head and said with a solemn expression, the person who captured Gaara is extremely powerful. Even if he goes berserk, he may not be able to do anything. After a moment of silence, Temari continued, whether the village in front is Yuyan village or not, we have to go in and take a look. Please be careful, everyone. I have an ominous feeling that there may be extraordinary dangers lurking inside. Everyone, always remember our mission this time, to rescue Gaara. Temari waved his hand, and a dozen people slowly entered Yuyan village while hiding their figures. Lord Orochimaru, something seems to be wrong. Is this really a Megakure village? A young man wearing glasses frowned and stared at the ruins of a village not far away. Orochimaru's face froze slightly as he looked at the scene in front of him. This was indeed not the Megakure village in his memory. He has been to Yuyan village more than once. According to common sense, it is impossible for such a situation to happen. He is very aware of Pain's strength. When he captured the Samsara Eye, he suffered a lot of losses at Pain's hands. Lord Orochimaru, are we going the wrong way? Kabuto Yakushi asked. Orochimaru shook his head. No, this is the Hidden Rain Village. After pointing to the stone monument buried in the ruins, Orochimaru continued, the reason why a Megakure village became like this is that it was invaded. And, Orochimaru looked up at the cloudless sky and smiled, and it is very likely that Pain did not resist this invasion. Orochimaru is very sure of this, because he has long known that the reason why it rains all the time in Megakure village is because it is a ninjutsu. Now that ninjutsu has been lifted, Pain is either dead or seriously injured and ran away. Kabuto, follow me. Orochimaru jumped up and rushed into the ruined Megakure village at extremely fast speeds. He was looking forward to one thing very much. What a wonderful thing it would be if he could not only find the materials for the 10th improved version of the dirt reincarnation, but also get a pair of reincarnation eyes to play with. Along the way, there are ravines and crisscrossing ravines in Yuyan village. There are ruins and broken walls everywhere, and there are Madara blood stains formed after the blood has dried up everywhere. Suddenly, a crack appeared in front of them, which was more than 10 meters wide, 40 or 50 meters deep, but as long as one could see, blocking the way of the two people. Looking at this deep trench that almost bisected the earth, Kabuto Yakushi couldn't help but exclaimed. Master Orochimaru, the top of this deep ravine is so flat and smooth that it seems like it could be split open with a palm. Is there anyone in this world who really has this level of power? Yakushi Kabuto stared at the deep ditch in front of him, his throat rolled, and his mouth felt dry. He had never seen anyone do it to this extent. Orochimaru also looked at the deep ditch in front of him very carefully, and then he lay on the ground and smelled hard. After a few seconds, Orochimaru's eyes widened and he laughed in surprise. I know who invaded the Hidden Rain village. This taste is the taste of Uchiha Yi-fan. Orochimaru crazily inhaled the smell remaining in the air and laughed. I can't be wrong, not only here, but also over there, there is the smell of Yi-fan everywhere. It's wonderful, simply wonderful. Yakushi Kabuto smelled it and looked helpless. He didn't smell anything special at all. Kabuto Yakushi became even more envious when he saw that Orochimaru could tell who had been here through a ravine. He secretly swore in his heart that he must become the same person as Orochimaru. Immediately, Yakushi Kabuto reacted and said in shock, Master Orochimaru, do you mean that this deep trench was caused by Mark alone? Orochimaru smiled and nodded, not only this deep trench, but also what used to be a sea is now a bare sea. There is also the huge pit over there, which is Yi-fan's masterpiece. Quote. Kabuto Yakushi looked in the direction Orochimaru pointed, his eyes almost bulging out, his body stiffened, and he kept swallowing his saliva. The impact from the giant pit in the distance was really too great. If Orochimaru hadn't said it himself, he would never have believed it. Are people who can achieve this level really still human? Not to mention that Pain only has one pair of reincarnation eyes, even if he has 10 pairs, he is probably no match for Yi-fan. Kabuto Yakushi was immersed in shock and couldn't extricate himself. Let's go. Since Mark is here, the things needed for the reincarnation of the dirty land can be easily obtained. Orochimaru patted Yakushi Kabuto's shoulder and ran as fast as he could. He was very excited that he would see Mark soon. Suddenly, dozens of kunai with detonating talismans flew towards them. Kabuto Yakushi quickly blocked it. Lord Orochimaru, there is an enemy attack. On the other side, Temari frowned and asked, why are you taking action? This is tantamount to exposing our position. Orochimaru stood there, licked his tongue, and smiled evilly, as this, the taste of a woman. Mr. Itachi, it seems that someone has entered Yuyin village. In one of the few tall buildings, Kisame Kazaki gnawed on delicious chicken legs. Well, it seems they are people from Sunagakur village, and Orochimaru. Uchiha Itachi stood by the windowsill, looking into the distance, thoughtfully. Mr. Itachi, since Mr. Yi-fan asked us to take care of Yuyin village, we must put an end to all actions that damage Yuyin village. Uchiha Itachi nodded in agreement and whispered, let's take a look for now. Orochimaru's purpose here may be very complicated. Kisame Kisami's expression changed when he heard this. What Orochimaru did was indeed outrageous. People from Sand-Hidden Village. Yakushi Kabuto frowned, took out a kunai and prepared it. Based on years of experience, he judged that there were at least a dozen people on the other side. Oops, there's Orochimaru on the other side. Temari's eyebrows were raised and her face was extremely solemn. What? That person is actually one of the legendary Sannin, Orochimaru. Are you sure? If he is really Orochimaru, we will be in danger. Yes, with the strength of the few of us, there is no way we can be Orochimaru's opponent. That's one of the legendary Sannin. As soon as Temari finished speaking, there was a burst of noise from the crowd. Their expressions were all different, and their worries were almost written directly on their faces. The name of the person, the shadow of the tree, and the opponent is the legendary Sannin Orochimaru, making them extremely anxious. Although they are all high-level combatants from Sunagakur village, they are still very self-aware of their upper limit of strength. Kankuro frowned and kept thinking about countermeasures. Although Sunagakur village had cooperated with Orochimaru not long ago, it was because they had the same purpose. Now that they meet again, he doesn't think that Orochimaru, a person who does things based on his mood, will give them good results. Don't panic, everyone, Orochimaru may not have any ill intentions towards us. Temari said, deciding to take the initiative to show up for negotiation. She understood that if it continued like this, it would only become more and more disadvantageous for them. Although Orochimaru's thoughts are difficult to figure out, he should be able to deal with them. Although Kankuro is somewhat reluctant to use this method, it seems that there is no other way at the moment. After all, it was their people who attacked first. Kabuto, don't be so nervous, relax. Orochimaru grinned, his long tongue almost hanging down to his waist. Lord Orochimaru, the enemy is hiding in the dark, we still have to be careful. Kabuto Yakushi was still a little worried, and he couldn't help but feel a little nervous in his heart. No need to make a fuss, it's just a few kids. What we should pay attention to is not here, but the other two people. Orochimaru's face was calm and he looked at the only tall building left in the Hidden Rain village. His sixth sense told him that there were two beings no weaker than himself hidden in that building. Even, it is very likely to be more powerful than him. Kabuto Yakushi followed Orochimaru's gaze, and his heart suddenly twitched involuntarily. In an instant, he realized a very serious problem, and there were several strong men hidden in it. This feeling, is it Yi-fan? The appearance of that man appeared in Yakushi Kabuto's mind involuntarily. Before he could think too much, Temari's clear and sweet voice rang in his ears. Orochimaru-senpai, we are really destined. I didn't expect to meet again so soon. Temari forced herself to calm down and greeted Orochimaru. The dozen or so ninjas following behind them had solemn expressions and were ready to take action at any time. Although there were only two people on the other side, they did not dare to look down upon him in the slightest. They know very well that if there is even the slightest mistake, their lives will be at risk. At that time, let alone rescuing Gaara, whether there is a whole corpse or not is another matter. Yes, we are indeed very destined. While talking, Orochimaru suddenly appeared behind Temari. Temari could clearly feel the temperature on Orochimaru's body. It was very cold and did not look like a living person at all. Even the tongue wrapped around his body had no warmth at all. It was as if it was frozen by ice, and it was bone-chilling cold. Temari! Kankuro yelled when he saw this, and immediately wanted to attack Orochimaru. But before he could react, his body was completely restrained by several snakes, and he couldn't move at all. When the other Jonin saw this scene, they knew they couldn't just sit there and wait for death, so they mustered up the courage to take action against Orochimaru. In an instant, all kinds of ninjutsu surrounded Orochimaru. Orochimaru stood where he was, still maintaining his previous actions without any change. When ninjutsu was about to fall on him, a huge and thick snake appeared and blocked all attacks. Those attacks were like tickling a big snake, unable to cause any harm to it at all. The big snake opened its huge mouth, its body slightly arched, and fiercely swallowed two sand-hidden village Jonin. A large amount of scarlet blood flowed down the corners of the snake's mouth, looking extremely terrifying. Orochimaru, stop! What are you going to do to let us go? Temari shouted. Ha ha! Orochimaru raised a smile at the corner of his mouth. It's very simple if you want me to let you go. As long as you follow me, I guarantee that nothing will happen to them. As he spoke, Orochimaru's eyes looked up and down at Temari's hot figure. Although he was young, the areas that should be developed were already mature. She looks good, has a good figure, and comes from a famous family. I wonder if Yi Fan likes this type of woman. Orochimaru thought. From the moment he felt the breath left by Mark and the breath of a woman, Orochimaru understood that everything was fate. Kankuro was shocked when he heard this. Looking at Orochimaru's old-fashioned look, Kankuro knew that nothing good was going to happen. Impossible, even if you kill us all, she can't go with you. No, Orochimaru-senpai, I am willing to go with you, I just hope you can keep your word. Temari said solemnly. Kankuro's mouth froze, and he wanted to say something, but was interrupted by Temari, saying, Have you forgotten the purpose of our coming out this time? Gaara is still waiting for us. But, if you follow. Kankuro was extremely confused. He had already guessed Temari's fate. I have made up my mind. Temari's eyes were full of determination, and she turned to Orochimaru and said softly, Let's go. Orochimaru looked at Temari's performance and was very satisfied. He let go of his tongue wrapped around her body and said with a smile, As long as you serve her properly, the benefits will be beyond your imagination. After saying this, Orochimaru took Temari and Yakushi Kabuto and went straight to the building where Itachi and Kisame were. He wanted to confirm something. In the spiritual time room, Yi Fan was wearing 50 tons of clothes and furiously outputting to Gaara. After a combination of punches, Gaara, with a bruised nose and swollen face, once again lay motionless on the ground. Come on, keep going, Shukaku, come out quickly, it's your turn to perform. Yi Fan said with a smile. One-tail Shukaku listened to these words, his whole body was trembling, hiding in Gaara's body, motionless, pretending not to hear. Over the past few days, it couldn't remember how many times it had been beaten by the werewolf outside. It only knows that as soon as it goes out, it will be beaten to the point of death, the real kind of death. Today's one-tail Shukaku is no longer the Shukaku who wanted to run out and play whenever he got the chance. It has grown up and matured, and it just wants to stay quietly in Gaara's body and be a good baby. As for occupying Gaara's body and going outside to play or something like that, let's forget about it. It no longer wanted to face that boy who looked harmless, but his attacks became more and more sinister every time. I'd better leave it to Gaara to get beaten or something. Shukaku, didn't you always clamor to come out to play and kill me before? Why don't you come out now when I ask you to come out? Yi Fan slowly approached Gaara, kicked him with his foot, and asked, I still like the unruly you that you were, hurry up and be proud. After a few more kicks, one-tail Shukaku still had no reaction. Yi Fan frowned and said, Maid, if I give you a chance, it won't work for you. You won't come out, right? Yi Fan slowly raised his right hand, and an extremely powerful force gradually gathered in his palm. The aura of terror penetrated Gaara's body, penetrated into his spiritual world, and surrounded one-tail Shukaku. Feeling this extremely powerful and destructive atmosphere everywhere, one-tail Shukaku shivered. At this moment, it felt like it was going to die. You're not going out to play, are you? Yi Fan's voice echoed in Shukaku's ears, without a trace of emotion, and extremely cold. Shukaku was frightened by the sound that chilled him to the bone. It knows that if it doesn't go out, its life will really be over. Brother, no. Grandpa, you are my grandfather, don't do it, your grandson will come out right now. One-tail Shukaku's voice kept trembling, and he was extremely scared. As soon as he finished speaking, Shukaku slowly appeared through Gaara's body. After turning into the same size as his original body, Shukaku looked at Yi Fan with a smile on his face and said, "Grandpa, I'm out. What do you think I can do for you?" Yi Fan raised his head and glanced at it, and cursed angrily. "Lousy doesn't have a cowardly grandson like you. You are a tailed beast after all. Is it really okay to be so cowardly?" Hey. Shukaku listened quietly to Yi Fan's teachings and did not refute. At this time, Shukaku looked like an extremely docile tabby cat. If an outsider looked at it, they would definitely not believe it was a tailed beast. After all, where in this world can there be such a docile tailed beast? Aren't tailed beasts supposed to be extremely vicious? Hey. Hey Hammer, hey, come on, you are a tailed beast, be fierce. Yi Fan cursed angrily. Shukaku, hey. Yi Fan, it's really hopeless. Now besides hey, it's still hey. Yi Fan glared at Shukaku and said, "Come on, continue fighting with me." When Shukaku heard this, he quickly stepped back 180 meters, and his whole body was covered with hair. Grandpa, please spare me. What I specialize in is sealing techniques, not fighting." One-tail Shukaku knelt on the ground and kowtowed, with tears rolling in his eyes. It could never forget the pain Yi Fan had caused it the previous few times in its life. That kind of pain was something it had never felt before. Compared with it, it even felt better to be dead. Grandpa, why don't you go catch the 2 tails, 3 tails, 8 tails, and 9 tails? If they come together, you will definitely have a great time. Especially 9 tails. 9 tails is the strongest among us and will definitely be able to have fun with you. The trembling Shukaku spoke very quickly, just begging Yi Fan to let him go. It really doesn't want to fight with Yi Fan anymore, it's too painful. Let's play with me first and then talk about this matter. Yi Fan stretched his waist, and his figure disappeared in a flash. When he reappeared, Shukaku had already begun to scream. In the next day, Shukaku's screams could be heard in every corner of the spiritual time room. Yi Fan seemed not to be tired at all, educating and fighting Shukaku ferociously. This situation continued until Shukaku couldn't bear it anymore, and then he slowly stopped. Yi Fan stood next to Shukaku, who was lying on the ground and was almost out of breath, pinched his chin, nodded and said, "Your suggestion is very good. It's really difficult for you to satisfy me with just a tailed beast. After I have eaten, I'll call 9 tails over and let's train together to become stronger." Yuyan Village, above the tall building, on the rooftop. Uchiha Itachi and Inokaki Kisame stood by the railing, looking at the Orochimaru 3 who were running towards this direction at great speed. "Mr. Itachi, why do you think Mr. Yi Fan wants to hand over Yuyan Village to us? What does it mean to hand it over to us? How should we manage it?" Kisame Kazaki didn't take Orochimaru and the others seriously at all, and asked with a sad look on his face. Uchiha Itachi shook his head and sighed, "I don't know how to manage it specifically. How to deal with the problem of Yuyan Village has been bothering them for a long time." In the distance, in a very secret place, a black eye is hidden, observing all the situations in Yuyan Village. Through this eye, Heizetsu, who is in Kamui's world, can clearly know everything that happens in Yuyan Village. Black Zetsu was very surprised by Orochimaru's appearance and was a little confused. Looking at Orochimaru's appearance, Black Zetsu suddenly remembered the forbidden technique in his hand, the reincarnation of the earth. "This Orochimaru, maybe we can use it." Black Zetsu glanced at Uchiha Obito, who was recovering from his injuries, and muttered to himself. Aim Hidden Village. Under the tall building, Orochimaru stopped and looked up at Uchiha Itachi and Kisame Kazaki beside the railing. "Itachi, Kisame, long time no see." Orochimaru raised an evil smile at the corner of his mouth and jumped onto the rooftop with 3 clicks. Temari and Kabuto Yakushi followed closely behind. Itachi, your body seems to be much stronger than before. Orochimaru stared at Itachi's Sharingan, not hiding the greed in his eyes. Yakushi Kabuto looked at a glass bottle placed randomly on the railing, his pupils shrank rapidly, and he exclaimed, this is, the Samsara Eye. Obito, the Samsara Eye is in Itachi's hand, and Mark seems to have completely disappeared. Heiju thought about it for a moment before speaking. He felt very strange and couldn't figure out where Yi-Fan had gone. He seemed to have disappeared out of thin air. He searched for 50 miles but could not find Yi-Fan. Disappeared. Uchiha Obito, who had recovered about half of his injuries, had a hesitant look on his face and said solemnly, Yi-Fan gave you the reincarnation eye, Weasel, and he disappeared. Could it be that he wanted to use the reincarnation eye to lure us out? Heiju thought for a while and replied, this possibility is not impossible. Yi-Fan's perception is so scary. Maybe they discovered our existence when they were fighting Nagato, but there was just no way to enter the Kamui space. Quote. Uchiha Obito nodded and said, let's observe again. I am no match for Yi-Fan now. If I rush out to fight for the Samsara Eye, I will probably lose my life. Well, this is the only way now. Heiju's face was ugly. The sudden appearance of Yi-Fan was so powerful that it scared him and disrupted many of his plans. Originally, everything was on track, and the road to resurrecting Otsutsuki Kagaya was more than halfway gone. If anything went wrong at this time, all efforts would be in vain. What's even more tragic is that if he died in Yi-Fan's hands, his mother would never be able to be resurrected. It is indeed not possible to attack hastily. We must take a long-term approach. After a few seconds of silence, Heiju suddenly frowned and asked with an ugly face. Obito, if Mark knows so many secrets, will he also know that the Samsara Eye is not Nagato's in the first place? Thinking of this, Heiju's scalp tingled. If Yi-Fan knew about this, he might also know some other things about resurrecting his mother Kagaya. Obito's face turned very ugly when he heard this. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this possibility was very high. When facing Mark, there is always a feeling of being seen through, as if there are no secrets at all. Suddenly, what Mark Yi said to him kept echoing in his mind, making him involuntarily doubt the Heiju in front of him. Was Lin's death really caused by Madara on purpose? Just so that I could activate Mangekyo Sharingan? Am I really just a pawn to be used? Is Zetsuda really the slave created by Madara using the Gedo statue? For a moment, Obito's mind was very confused, and he gradually began to believe Mark's words. What should I do if Madara really set up a trap to kill Lin intentionally? Does that mean that the world Madara said was also a lie to me? In so many years, this is the first time that Obito has doubts about what he has been doing. Madara. Obito's eyes darkened, determined to find all the truth. Black Zetsu looked at Obito, who was deep in thought and had already made his own decision. The appearance of Yi-Fan forced him to make some choices, even if the time was not so mature. He knew that he couldn't drag it out any longer. If he dragged it on, it would probably lead to a total loss. Obito, Orochimaru is also in a Megakure village, and is currently confronting Itachi and Kisame. As far as I know, Orochimaru seems to have mastered the forbidden art of earth reincarnation, and has been continuously perfecting it during this period. Yi-Fan's strength is too strong. Maybe we can use the technique of filthy soil reincarnation. Quote. You mean to use Orochimaru's earth reincarnation to summon Uchiha Madara, and use his power to fight against Yi-Fan with us? Obito immediately heard the implication of Black Zetsu's words, and it did sound like a feasible solution. Moreover, you can also ask questions about Lin's death. This seems to be the best of both worlds. Yes, not only can we summon Madara to help, but we can also awaken many strong men from the past in the ninja world, such as the ninja god Senju Hashirama and the 4th Hokage Namikaze Minato. They are among the few top experts in the ninja world. Without their help, no matter how strong Yi-Fan is, he is just a bird in a cage, unable to fly. Quote. Well, if we can awaken them at their peak, then a mere Yi-Fan is nothing to be afraid of. Obito kept thinking about it, and it seemed that there was only one way to do it now. Okay, let's do this. After I recover from my injuries, I will capture Orochimaru immediately. Uchiha Madara, I'm looking forward to meeting you again. Obito made a prompt decision and agreed to Black Zetsu's proposal. But this time, he no longer believed in Heiju like before and was on guard. If he is really Madara's pawn, Black Zetsu is most likely the one that Madara has always placed beside him to monitor him, including after Madara's death. Well, then you should take good care of your injuries during this period and try to return to your peak condition in the shortest possible time. If the time is delayed for too long, the Eye of the Moon plan is likely to fail, and by then, all your efforts will be in vain. Quote. Black Zetsu deliberately reminded Obito, and after saying that, he continued to pay attention to the situation in Yuyan village through the eyes of the outside world. It seems that Uzumaki Nagato is dead. Orochimaru stared at the Samsara Eye in the glass bottle made with special technology, and a smile appeared on his lips. If you keep the Samsara Eye like this, it will most likely cause the Samsara Eye to lose its activity. Orochimaru was not afraid of Uchiha Itachi and Kisame Kazaki at all, and the greed in his eyes was undisguised. Before getting Yi Fan's body, he wanted Uchiha Itachi's body and the Samsara Eye. Looking at the healthy Uchiha Itachi, he thought Sasuke was a joke. No matter how you compare the two, Itachi seems to be much stronger than Sasuke. Orochimaru, aren't you afraid of death? Uchiha Itachi slowly turned around, and the blood-red 3 Magatama Sharingan transformed into Mangekyo Sharingan. As soon as he saw Orochimaru, he remembered the curse mark on his brother Sasuke. If it were the past, he would have let Sasuke go find Orochimaru. To put it in two parts, no matter what purpose Orochimaru has, Sasuke is much safer staying with him than staying in Konoha. However, now that Danzo is dead, there is no need to stay with Orochimaru. Die, Orochimaru laughed, as if he had heard the biggest joke in the world. Itachi, do you think you can kill me? Looking at the entire ninja world, Orochimaru felt that apart from Yi Fan who could kill him, there could never be another person with this ability. Boom! Orochimaru, who was still laughing wildly, suddenly fell down and smashed 7 or 8 floors before barely stopping. It's so noisy. Kisame Kazaki spit impatiently and kept his punching posture. Orochimaru-sama. When Kabuto Yakushi saw this, he quickly jumped down the hole. Kabuto felt heartbroken when he saw Orochimaru lying on the ground like mud. It was as if Kisame Kisami's punch didn't hit Orochimaru, but hit him. Tamari stared at Itachi and Kisame in front of him, looking at the dusty pothole in front of him. His face turned pale, his whole body was shaking, his legs were weak, and he almost collapsed to the ground. Is this the legendary Uchiha Itachi and Kisame Kazaki? Temari's fingertips turned white and she was shocked. The two of them, no matter how you look at it, are much stronger than the strongest person in Sand Hidden Village. She even doubted that even the previous Cage could not be the opponent of the two people in front of her. Uchiha Itachi glanced at Tamari. Tamari instantly felt as if she had fallen into an ice cellar and could not even think of escaping. Facing this ruthless man, Tamari felt that he could only sit back and wait for death to come, without the slightest strength to resist. In front of Uchiha Itachi and Inagaki Kisame, she suddenly felt that her little strength was a joke. The invisible pressure made her breathless. What is the purpose of people from Sunagakur village coming to Rain Hidden Village? Itachi said calmly. Temari's mind went blank and she couldn't form a complete sentence. Mr. Itachi, this time the people of Sunagakur village saw Aim Hidden Village, and it seems they are not cooperating with Orochimaru. Kisame Kazaki spoke calmly. He also knew about the cooperation between Sunagakur village and Orochimaru to invade Konoha. But this time it doesn't seem like that, it looks more like a hostile relationship between the two. Well, it seems so. Uchiha Itachi spoke calmly without any unnecessary movement. If in the past, people from Sunagakur village invaded Konoha, Itachi would never show mercy and would definitely kill him if he saw one. It's different now. He has a more ambitious goal. He has to look at the specific reasons for all this before making a decision. Why did you cooperate with Orochimaru to invade Konoha? Uchiha Itachi's voice was cold, without any warmth. After hearing this, Temari's pupils dilated rapidly, her legs went weak, and she collapsed on the ground. She was so happy that she didn't know what to say. Itachi, you seem to have scared her. Orochimaru's voice sounded. She is that lady, and as far as I know you are working for that lady now. Uchiha Itachi and Kisame Kazaki heard this, and their expressions changed slightly. Of course they knew who Orochimaru was talking about. After hearing this, although they didn't know whether it was true or not, the two of them looked at Temari with much gentler eyes. Temari clearly felt the change in Itachi and Kisami's attitude, and was shocked. That one, who on earth, can actually make the murderous Uchiha Itachi and Inagaki Kisame change their attitudes so quickly? For a moment, Temari's mind was filled with questions about who possessed such power. Temari's heart was in turmoil, and she even ignored the word, ma'am, and was almost stunned. Orochimaru, your information is quite good. Kisame Mikigaki smiled and said. Ma'am, please don't joke around. If I find out that you are talking nonsense, I will have to see if you are really immortal. Well, Kisame is right. I'm afraid you will have to stay in my Tsukuyomi world for 100 years before you can understand what death is like. Uchiha Itachi answered, glanced at Orochimaru, and told him the consequences of his nonsense. Ha ha ha, we are all working for that person. We can be considered companions after all. How could we lie to you? Orochimaru's figure suddenly appeared behind Itachi, and his hands transformed into a dozen large snakes, swimming around Itachi's body. Jung, a burst of white light flashed, blood splashed, and several snake heads appeared on the ground. Orochimaru, what are you doing here? Uchiha Itachi held a kunai in one hand, and the kunai was dripping with blood. He did not refute the fact that Orochimaru was also working for Yi Fan. He knew about the fierce battle between Orochimaru and Yi Fan. If Orochimaru was not doing things for Yi Fan, he would never be able to walk out of Konoha alive. Itachi is quite clear about Mark's strength. The only thing that can be explained is that Orochimaru also reached some kind of agreement with Yi Fan, but the specifics are unknown. Itachi, we are all our own people, don't be so angry. Orochimaru was still standing next to Itachi, very close to him, almost touching him. Shigaki Kisame did not continue to take action. He also felt that Orochimaru might have reached some kind of agreement with Yi Fan. Since Uzumaki Nagato is dead, it is meaningless for me to come here. After taking one look at the ruins of Omegakure village, Orochimaru already knew that he would not be able to get what he wanted during this trip. He originally planned to sneak into Yuyin village and secretly learn Nagato's technique of making corpses. After a long period of speculation and inference, he had long known that Pain was no longer a living person but a puppet controlled by others. He wants to use this technology to make the reincarnation of the Dirty Land as perfect as possible, preferably to directly exert the peak combat power of the awakened person. He also understood that only in that way could he defeat Yi Fan and occupy Yi Fan's body. Otherwise, it would be difficult to attack Mark. However, this time he did not come in vain. He met Uchiha Itachi and the Samsara Eye. These two are the existences he once dreamed of. Even now, it is very important to him. Itachi, this trip has lost its meaning, but it has not lost its meaning. We are companions, bring it to you. Orochimaru suddenly attacked. His clone ran over to snatch the Rinnegan, while his main body attacked Uchiha Itachi, trying to occupy his body. I saw Orochimaru's neck suddenly stretched out and bit Uchiha Itachi's neck at an extremely fast speed. HMPH, Orochimaru, you never have a long memory. Itachi snorted coldly, having been on guard against this move for a long time. A flash of red light flashed in Mangekyo Sharingan, and Orochimaru instantly fell into the world of Tsukuyomi. Orochimaru's body froze in place, motionless. Countless long nails had already been nailed to the wooden stakes in his spiritual world. How is this possible? I clearly cut off all my vision, how could I still be hit by your genjutsu? In the spiritual world, Orochimaru looked in disbelief. Orochimaru, just repent in the Tsukuyomi world. Itachi's voice echoed throughout Orochimaru's spiritual world. Orochimaru-sama. Kabuto Yakushi watched this scene and hurriedly rushed to the rescue with a kunai. Before he could get close to Itachi, black flames ignited on his body. The pain of burning his heart made Yakushi Kabuto miserable, and he felt that his body was about to turn into ashes. Temari was slumped on the ground looking at all this, his face as pale as paper. One of the legendary Sannin was killed instantly. How strong must Itachi be? And for such a strong man, but he is doing things for others, how strong should that person be? In the spiritual time room, after Yi Fan had eaten and drank enough, he was going to go back to Konoha and let Nine Tails train with him. By the way, let Kisame go back to Kurigakure village and invite 3 tails and 6 tails over. As soon as he stepped out of the spiritual time room, he saw Itachi beating Orochimaru and Yakushi Kabuto, with a trembling beauty sitting paralyzed next to him. Kabuto Yakushi cannot die for the time being. Yi Fan murmured. Several hundred meters away, Yi Fan looked in the direction of Uchiha Itachi and the others, touched his chin, and basically guessed the whole story. Even though Yi Fan was carrying 100 tons of weight, his speed was still extremely fast. The distance of hundreds of meters was covered in an instant, and a wisp of breeze slowly fell on the high-rise buildings of Yuyan village. Weasel. Yi Fan nodded and whispered. I got it. Uchiha Itachi nodded slightly, and a light flashed through the Mangekyo Sharingan, releasing Tsukuyomi for Orochimaru and Amaterasu for Yakushi Kabuto. Call. Orochimaru's whole body went limp, and he fell to his knees, his facial features tensed, and drool couldn't stop falling from the corners of his mouth. He looked very scary. Orochimaru, who felt that his spirit was close to collapse, once felt that his soul was damaged. This kind of pain is different from physical pain. It is a kind of pain that cannot be expressed in words. He clearly felt that Uchiha Itachi's eye power was far greater than before. This time the Tsukuyomi world seems to be several levels higher than the last Tsukuyomi world. Yakushi Kabuto, who was dressed in rags, was already unconscious. Between the arms and chest, the white bones can be clearly seen. There is no sign of blood flow, and the blood has almost been burned dry. If Yi Fan hadn't appeared in time, Yakushi Kabuto's life would have been decided here. Temari looked at Uchiha Itachi, suddenly stopped, confused. He didn't know what happened at all, and thought it was Itachi who was showing kindness. Until she watched helplessly, Kisame Kazaki, one of the famous 7 ninja swordsmen, bowed his hands behind her respectfully and said, Mr. Yi Fan, after. Only then did she realize that Itachi stopped not because he was showing kindness, but because a very noble and powerful man had arrived. Who on earth can make Uchiha Itachi, who slaughtered his entire clan, and Kisame Kazaki, known as the tailless beast, have such respect? Temari felt her throat was tight and her mouth was dry. Cold sweat involuntarily covered her forehead and wet her back. At this moment, she really wanted to turn around and see who this ruthless man was, but her reason stopped her. The person who can tame Itachi and Kisame cannot be an ordinary person, and his actions are likely to be 100 or 1,000 times more perverted than the two of them. For a moment, Temari's whole body was stiff and extremely nervous. Especially when she thought about Orochimaru's words that he wanted to give himself to the lady, it became even worse. How could a pervert like Orochimaru be a good person if he could give it to someone looking for a woman? He is definitely the pervert among perverts, the best among perverts. Temari swallowed involuntarily. She could almost imagine her future life. Needless to say, ham and eggs may be indispensable. When he thought of this, Temari's face was covered with black lines and he was very desperate. However, if you look carefully, you can see a faint blush on her gloomy cheeks. Yi Fan glanced at Temari, who was slumped on the ground and shivering, and ignored her, walking straight towards Orochimaru. The sound of footsteps came closer and closer, gently ringing in Temari's ears. Temari became more and more nervous. He's not going to take me, now, is he? If that's really the case, what should I do? There are a lot of people here. Hearing the sound of footsteps beside him, Temari quietly looked up and saw an extremely handsome face. The facial features are exquisite and three-dimensional, with sharp eyebrows and starry eyes, red lips and white teeth, especially the temperament between the eyebrows, which directly touches her soul. Although the face is slightly childish, the maturity in the eyes is incomparable. So handsome. Temari's eyes were a little dull and his mind was blank. I thought he was a ferocious monster with a ferocious appearance, like a monster, but I never thought he was such a handsome guy with clear features. Looking at Yi Fan's fleeting face, Temari frowned slightly. She seemed to have seen him somewhere before. This feeling was too familiar. Uchiha Yi Fan, long time no see. Orochimaru took a few deep breaths, and the tearing feeling in his head eased a lot, and he felt much more comfortable. Orochimaru, how did you do with the task I gave you? Yi Fan glanced at him and spoke calmly. As soon as these words came out, the eyes of Uchiha Itachi and Kisame Kazaki fell on Orochimaru. They all want to know what Yi Fan asked Orochimaru to do. At this moment, Tamari finally remembered who the young man in front of her was, and she was amazed. Although it was only a few days later, Yi Fan had changed so much that she couldn't believe it. Is he really the plague god who passed the Chunin exam? Isn't that outrageous? Tamari thought to herself. Orochimaru organized his words and said with a smile, the art of reincarnation in the dirty soil has basically reached a perfect state. Now there is only one medium missing, the body. Reincarnation in dirty soil. Uchiha Itachi and Gansaki Kisame were shocked when they heard this. Thinking of what Yi Fan said about the resurrection before, they vaguely seemed to have caught something. Could it be that Yi Fan wanted to use the art of reincarnation from the dirty earth to resurrect his parents and others? No, it won't be that simple. Judging from Yi Fan's pursuit, resurrecting is definitely to resurrect his parents in the true sense, rather than reincarnating bodies from dirty soil. Itachi and Kisame looked at Mark, dismissed the thoughts in their minds, and continued to listen. Oh, Yi Fan slowly approached Orochimaru, patted him on the shoulder, and said with a smile, you are so fast, you are worthy of it, Orochimaru. Regarding this, Yi Fan felt a little surprised. After all, Orochimaru didn't spend too much time at all. Immediately, he also guessed the purpose of Orochimaru coming to Hidden Rain Village, which was definitely to find out how Nagato made pain. After a pause, he continued to smile and said, Orochimaru, what are you going to do about the body? I think it might be better to use Hashirama cells as the carrier. Hashirama cells. Orochimaru's mind was spinning rapidly, and he was enlightened. For this period of time, he has been trying to find a way to make pain, but he has ignored the most awesome Hashirama cells. Seeing Orochimaru's sudden enlightenment, Yi Fan knew that he had already thought of using Baiju's body as a carrier for the reincarnation of the dirty land. Orochimaru, come to Konoha to find me in 10 days. I will wait for you in Konoha. If you want to kill me, you'd better prepare more strong people. Yi Fan asked with a smile, you really want the Samsara Eye, right? Orochimaru did not hide his ambition and licked his tongue, the meaning was very obvious. Seeing this, Yi Fan nodded and smiled slightly, since you want the Samsara Eye so much, then I will give you one. As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Fan pinched Orochimaru's head and dug out his right eye with one finger, causing blood to splash everywhere in an instant. Then, Yi Fan summoned the Samsara Eye like taking an object from the air, and placed it in Orochimaru's eye socket. The sudden change shocked everyone present and made them look confused. The Rinnegan Eye is the legendary Eye of 6 Paths, and is probably the only one in the entire ninja world. But now, Yi Fan gave it to the ambitious Orochimaru like a cabbage, which made them puzzled. Uchiha Itachi and Kazaki Kisame looked at this scene. Although they looked surprised, they didn't say much. They knew that Mark must have his own reasons for doing this. The pharmacist, who was paralyzed on the ground and unable to move, looked at all this, and although he didn't know what kind of medicine Yi Fan was selling in the gourd, he was happy from the bottom of his heart. Ignoring the heartbreaking pain coming from his body, he grinned. Among everyone present, the most confused one was Orochimaru. He has a wide range of research on most things in the ninja world, and he knows very well how precious the Samsara Eye is. Feeling the Samsara Eye in his eye sockets constantly taking root on his body, Orochimaru ignored the pain and tried his best to make the Samsara Eye completely attached to his body. Orochimaru sat cross-legged on the ground, frantically mobilizing the chakra in his body, gathering it all in his eye sockets, trying his best to prevent his body from rejecting this extremely powerful force. Ah! The severe pain made Orochimaru scream. Despite the blood dripping and the severe pain impacting his body and soul, Orochimaru was still unwilling to give up the Samsara Eye, even though he was now on the verge of death. The Eye of Reincarnation is indeed the legendary Eye of Sage of 6 Paths. It's really powerful. Puff! Orochimaru spat out a mouthful of blood, staining a large area of the floor red. Even so, Orochimaru is still unwilling to give up. After a while, the Samsara Eye was no longer so repulsive to Orochimaru's body, and Orochimaru understood that the opportunity to tame the Samsara Eye had come. Without any hesitation, he cut off his right hand and magically took out an arm grown with Hashirama's cells, quickly attaching it. This arm has been carried by him a long time ago. He was ready when he planned to snatch Pain's Samsara Eye. Unexpectedly, after going round and round, I finally used it. When the arm grown from Hashirama's cells was attached, the samsara eye no longer rejected Orochimaru's body. A powerful force traveled through the meridians throughout his body, and Orochimaru's aura completely changed at this moment. Compared with before, he was completely different. Ha ha ha, Orochimaru laughed wildly. Is this the power of the samsara eye? He felt like he had gained unprecedented strength. Shinra Tensei. Orochimaru's eyes suddenly opened, and an extremely powerful repulsive force suddenly burst out. Temari, Kabuto Yakushi, Uchiha Itachi, Kisame and Aragaki, everyone except Yifan were bounced away by the powerful repulsive force. Itachi and Kisame were fine, but Temari and Yakushi Kabuto were directly thrown away, 100 meters away. The surrounding buildings also collapsed at this moment. Is this the power that Uzumaki Nagato once had? Orochimaru said with an evil smile on his lips. He felt several uses from his right eye, and he felt that the ability of the samsara eye did not stop there and could be further developed. Haha, Orochimaru, it seems that you have studied the ability of the samsara eye a long time ago, and you were able to use it as soon as you adapt. You are really a genius. Yifan clapped his hands gently and slowly approached Orochimaru. Orochimaru, I wonder if using the power of the samsara eye, combined with the art of reincarnation in the dirty earth, can make the reincarnated person more perfect. Orochimaru, who was immersed in joy, had a smile on his face. He thought Yifan's proposal was very feasible. The treasure buried in the eyes of reincarnation seems to be far beyond what he understands now. Uchiha Yifan, aren't you afraid that I will devour you now that I have the samsara eye? Orochimaru stretched out his tongue, circling around Mark, and his tone was full of threats. Hearing this, Yifan couldn't help laughing. You can try it. The corner of Orochimaru's mouth raised. He has always been an action person. He took action decisively, mobilized a large amount of chakra to gather on the samsara eye, and shouted, Shinra Tensei. The repulsive force, far exceeding the previous one, swept across all directions in an instant, and the only high-rise building in Yuyin village collapsed at this moment. Feeling this powerful repulsive force, Yifan calmly took a step forward without changing his expression. In an instant, the repulsive force rebounded, knocking Orochimaru hundreds of meters away, smashing through a series of houses before barely stopping. Cough cough cough. Orochimaru vomited a pool of old blood, and his ribs were shattered. Yifan took a step forward and appeared in front of Orochimaru. Orochimaru was half kneeling on the ground, with a trace of blood hanging from the corner of his mouth. He slowly raised his head and looked at Mark, his eyes full of greed. Uchiha Yifan, your body is indeed what I am looking for, and the samsara eye is not even half as good. Haha, I'll be waiting for you in Konoha in 10 days. If you want to get my body, this is your last chance. In addition, I will prepare 2 of the best bodies for my parents, bodies completely grown with Hashirama cells. Quote. One of the legendary Sannin, work hard. Yifan reached out and patted Orochimaru on the shoulder. His figure disappeared in a flash, and when he reappeared, he was already beside Kisame. Mr. Yifan. Well, Kisame, go back to Kurigakure village and invite 3 Tails Jinchuriki and 6 Tails Jinchuriki to Konoha. By the way, take the body of the person you want to resurrect with you. See you in Konoha in 10 days. Quote. So fast. Kisame Mikigaki was very happy when he heard this, and he could see the girl right away. Okay, Mr. Yifan, Mr. Weasel, I'll take my leave now. Kisame Kazaki laughed loudly and ran towards Kurigakure village with a smile on his face. After Kisame left, Yifan looked at Uchiha Itachi and asked, can your genjutsu control Orochimaru who has the samsara eye? Uchiha Itachi nodded. It shouldn't be a big problem. If he had been in bad health before, he wouldn't have dared to say this, but now he is different from what he used to be. Well, that's good. During this period, you can deal with the aftermath in Yuyin village. I'll see you in Konoha in 10 days. While speaking, Yifan looked at a dark thing in the distance. In the Kamui space, Heiju faced Mark's cold gaze and was so frightened that he backed away and hit the wall. Yifan, he has indeed discovered us a long time ago. Heiju lost his voice. It seems that he has indeed set a trap for us. Now that one of the samsara eyes is in Orochimaru's body, we must reach a cooperative relationship with him. Uchiha Obito pondered for a moment, knowing that the matter was urgent. In the Hidden Rain village, Orochimaru carried the pharmacist's bag on one shoulder and held Temari with chakra on the other side. He walked up to Yifan and said with a smile, "This woman is the son of Kazekage, the previous generation of Sunagakur village. I hope you will like it and enjoy it." Orochimaru gently sent Temari to Yifan and left without looking back. Yifan was confused and glared at Temari. "Are you planning to use a beauty trap on me? Can anyone tell me what is going on? Don't think that just because I have lived with Jiraiya for 10 years, you think that I am like him. I'm not, absolutely not." Yifan glanced at Temari. Although she was still young, her development was basically in place. Facing Yifan's gaze, Temari lowered her head gently, and her pale, paper-like cheeks turned red all of a sudden, like a ripe peach, which seemed to sizzle with just a touch of her hand. What is this expression? Yifan frowned slightly. He was not interested in Temari. He is a man who wants to change the entire ninja world. How can he sink into the love between his children? Women will only affect the speed of Yifan's drawing of the sword, and will only become a stumbling block on the road to success. Of course, if it's Hyuga Hinata's type, it can be counted separately. With a giant panda that can stand out from the crowd, no one will be confused if it touches it. Let's go. Yifan coldly rejected the passionate Temari. Temari didn't react for a moment. Where to go? Orochimaru has already betrothed me to you. After saying this, Temari instantly regretted it. She didn't know why she had said such a thing out of nowhere. Being able to leave here intact is obviously a joyful thing, so why do I have to be such a mean-spirited person to say such a thing? When Yifan heard this, his brows furrowed deeper and deeper. Could it be that this fool was controlled by Orochimaru? The more he thought about it, the more likely it was. Immediately, Jungs refused and said, "Go back to where you came from." Although he doesn't care too much about someone inserting a spy by his side, he will always feel bored if the spy is around him all the time. If Orochimaru is an opponent that he can't defeat, Yifan will still resort to all his tactics. It's a pity that Orochimaru is not that kind of person at all, and he has no need to play those fancy things. All conspiracies and tricks are nothing but paper tigers in the face of absolute power. This sentence is an eternal truth. Let him force him to be strong. Lousy as Yifan, he has all kinds of schemes and can break them with one punch. Before he finished speaking, Yifan turned around and left without any hesitation. Seeing this, Temari involuntarily took a step forward, wanting to follow, but her reason still stopped her. I can't forget the mission of leaving the village. Saving Gaara is the most important thing. Temari stared at Yifan's leaving back blankly, her long hair dancing in the wind, and she was frozen in place. Uchiha Itachi standing aside looked at this scene, just glanced lightly, and then continued to think about the task assigned to him by Yifan, and how to do it. At the same time, there were ripples in his heart, which was a long-lost excitement. After many years, I was finally about to see my parents again. How should I face them this time? Itachi's mood was very complicated, with excitement mixed with a trace of melancholy and a trace of fear, not daring to face it, yet looking forward to facing it. Yifan walked very slowly and was in no hurry to return to Konoha. He has been thinking about the problem of a world of great harmony and how to achieve it. He originally planned to create a near-perfect peaceful world before his parents were truly resurrected, but Orochimaru's speed disrupted his plan and gave him a surprise. Walking all the way, Yifan was in a very happy mood. After many years, he had finally waited for this moment. Walking on the ruins and bumpy road, Yifan didn't feel that the road was difficult, but felt that it was a different kind of scenery. While thinking a lot, Yifan heard one-tail Shukaku's begging. Grandpa, where have you been? Can you let me out for some air? It's been white here all day, and I'm really tired of staying here. Although I'm very happy here, I still want to go out and see the scenery outside. In the spiritual time room, Gaara kept opening his mouth, but the sound he made belonged to Shukaku. During this period of time inside, Gaara's seal had been destroyed beyond recognition, but the relationship between it and Gaara seemed to have undergone some changes. Shukaku no longer thinks about completely occupying Gaara's body, as if they have reached a certain balance, sharing the same body. Stop arguing. Yi Fan casually released Gaara's spiritual time room and smashed it on the ground until it was full of mud. Follow me. Yi Fan glared at him and said angrily. Hey, that's good. Thank you Grandpa for your mercy. Not only was Gaara not angry, he was actually smiling. Gaara's body consciousness was stunned for a moment, and he said softly, thank you, Grandpa. He secretly kept telling himself that this was definitely not because he was afraid of being beaten by Mark, absolutely not. But I just felt that Mark had an inexplicable sense of intimacy, and I couldn't help but call him Grandpa when I saw him. Yi Fan didn't pay much attention to them and walked alone. Gaara, on the other hand, followed behind him, breathing wantonly and taking in big gulps of air. He had never felt that the air outside was so fresh. Tamari, who had been watching Yi Fan leave, looked at Gaara who suddenly appeared, his eyes widened, and without thinking much, he hurriedly chased after him. Looking at Yi Fan who was drifting away and about to disappear from sight, he felt anxious. As this fool finished, Yi Fan murmured as he sensed Tamari running towards him. Grandpa, are you talking to me? Can you say it again? I was a little distracted just now. As soon as Gaara finished speaking, he heard an angry shout. Who are you? Let Gaara go and spare your life. The people from Sand Hidden Village who came to look for Gaara discovered Yi Fan's figure and also saw Gaara beside him. As soon as he finished speaking, more than a dozen ninjas from Sand Hidden Village jumped out and surrounded Yi Fan, each holding weapons in their hands, ready to take action at any time. They stared at Yi Fan, not daring to be careless or to look down upon. Although the person in front of me looks like just a boy, how weak can someone be who can capture Gaara? Among the crowd, Kankuro walked out with 4 or 5 puppets connected to the chakra wire in his hand. Gaara, come here quickly. With my brother here, I will never let you be bullied in any way, he said solemnly. Hearing this, Gaara's mouth kept twitching, and he quickly glanced at Mark secretly to make sure that he was not angry yet, and then rushed forward at an extremely fast speed. Kankuro, you took the wrong medicine when you stepped on the horse, didn't you? Gaara raised his hand and gave Kankuro a big dick, beating him until he was bleeding and had teeth all over the floor. A dozen other Jonin were also taught a lesson by Gaara using the same technique. Kankuro and the others covered their mouths and stared at Gaara in disbelief, their brows furrowed and they had no idea what was going on. Why would Gaara beat us? We are obviously here to rescue him. Everyone looked confused. One person couldn't bear the grievance and asked, Gaara, are you crazy? We are here to save you. Gaara's face darkened, he went up and whipped him away with another big dick, and cursed angrily. You are really a bunch of blind people. My grandpa and I have such a wonderful life together. Do you need to mind your own business? Your grandfather. Everyone was confused, their faces were full of questions and they didn't understand. Gaara's brain isn't like what anymore, is it? Or is the person in front of me not Gaara at all? Everyone asked themselves this question in their minds, their eyes constantly wandering between Mark and Gaara. Gaara, do you know what you are talking about? Kankuro was furious, pointing at him and furious, wanting to crush him to death. Their grandfather was a majestic and supreme being, how could he be confused with the young man in front of him? Kankuro stared at Yi Fan for a while, and the more he looked, the more familiar he felt. Although there were many changes in the temperament of the man in front of him, he still recognized him. Thinking of Yi Fan's identity, Kankuro became even more angry and roared. Gaara, how can you call me Grandpa, the god of plague in Konoha? You are the next generation Kazekage of our Sunagakur village, how can you be so careless about your identity? When Gaara heard this, he was very panicked. Cold sweat kept dripping like a downpour, and he quickly said with a smile. Grandpa, don't listen to his nonsense, and you must not be angry. My grandson will teach him a lesson for you. This time, both Gaara and Shukaku were completely panicked. The terrifying days of being dominated by Mark came to mind, and my whole body was trembling. Compared with the hardships they have endured, they would rather die directly. Kankuro looked at Gaara's grandson, his heart was full of disappointment, and he wanted to curse something. Before he could even finish his words, Gaara's big pussy was hit in the face like a sudden storm. Dozens or hundreds of blows were slapped on Kankuro's face, so hard that his own mother didn't even recognize him. Kankuro, who had a bruised nose and swollen face, and his face was covered in blood, collapsed on the ground helplessly, coughing up blood. Gaara was beating him while secretly observing Mark's condition. After seeing that Mark was not angry, he felt a little relieved. Glancing at the other people, Gaara didn't hesitate and gave them a slap in the face decisively, beating them until they cried and begged for mercy. When beating them, Shukaku also helped. One hand was Gaara's hand, and the other was the tailed beast's hand. People who originally thought Gaara was a fake looked at the tailed beast's hand and completely shut up. This couldn't be more true. Shukaku looked at the people with slap marks on their faces and bodies, and suddenly felt very beautiful in his heart. I didn't expect that it would feel so good to slap someone else's pussy. No wonder Grandpa always slapped our pussy in that strange house. Gaara and Shukaku both have similar ideas. Isn't this much more enjoyable than fighting with ninjutsu? We must carry forward Grandpa's big pussy in the future. Gaara and Shukaku thought silently. Yi Fan, who wanted to take action himself, looked at this scene and felt that there was no need to take action. Seeing the people rolling around on the ground with painful expressions, he felt a lot happier. Gaara glanced at the people on the ground, rushed forward and wanted to take action, but was stopped by Temari, who rushed over. Gaara, stop fighting. If you continue to fight, they will all be dead. Gaara heard the sound and slapped Temari in the face. After seeing the person clearly, he stopped abruptly. The slap missed Temari's face by only 0.01 centimeters. Why are you here? Gaara asked, turned to look at Mark, and said softly in a very polite and pleading tone. Grandpa, she is my sister, can you let her go? Temari was confused when he heard this title, but he didn't scold him. She understood that there were some people they couldn't afford to offend. If they offended, not to mention a few of them, even the entire Sunagakur village would be buried with them. Glancing at Konkuro and others lying on the ground, Temari made a decision, quickly ran to Yi Fan, knelt down, and begged. Please spare their lives. I will promise you anything you want me to do, no matter what it is. This horse is climbing up the pole. Yi Fan shuddered when he thought of Temari's appearance in Yuyan village just now, and then thought of what he said now. This girl is really greedy for my body. When Shukaku heard this, he felt very complicated and confused. I am going to accept Yi Fan as my grandfather, but you want to be his wife. If you want to add seniority, that's not how you do it, right? Since Shukaku and Gaara share the same body, they both have similar thoughts. Gaara felt Shukaku's thoughts and was stunned. How about, from now on, we each call each other our own, I call Temari grandma, and she calls me brother. Yi Fan, please let them go, can you? I really can. Temari spoke again, kowtowing. Yi Fan's face was full of black lines. He waved his hand and said, take them away quickly, I won't be polite if the next time happens. After hearing this, Temari felt grateful and quickly pulled Gaara, wanting to take him with her. But, no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't pull Gaara. Temari cast a questioning look at Gaara. Gaara. Shukaku. We also want to leave, but we really can't. Ahem. Gaara shook off Temari's hand and said with a serious face, you can go back by yourselves. I am very happy with my grandpa and don't want to leave his side. When Yi Fan heard this, he nodded with satisfaction. 1 mile away from Konoha village, Jiraiya, Naruto, Xiaoli, Tsunade, and Shizune were chatting and laughing on their way. Tsunade's condition has also improved a lot. As she walked, the giant panda was shaking up and down, which could be described as rough. Looking at this familiar land, Tsunade was in a good mood. She hadn't been home for a long time. I don't know what Konoha has become now. I can't even remember how long it has been since I went home. Tsunade sighed with a smile on her face. Tsunade-sama, it turns out you miss home too. Shizune snickered. The village destroyed by Shukaku should have been repaired long ago. Konoha today is very different from before. Jiraiya said with a smile. Well, Tsunade glanced at Jiraiya and smiled. I'm really looking forward to returning to my hometown after so many years. Let's speed up the pace. Tsunade ran quickly. After running 300 to 400 meters, Tsunade was stunned for a moment. She clearly saw 2 deep ditches outside the city wall to the east of Konoha village. The walls had also been renovated. Immediately, she quickened her pace again and ran with all her strength. After approaching Konoha, Jiraiya and his party clearly saw that the village was in a mess, with ruins everywhere. Looking at this scene, several people's hearts fell to the bottom. What happened to the village during this period of time? Jiraiya and the others looked extremely serious, with an ominous premonition. Jiraiya-sama and Tsunade are back. Jiraiya-sama and Tsunade-sama are back. On the wall of Konoha Hidden Village, the patrolling ninjas shouted, tears flowing uncontrollably. During this period of time, they had been too depressed. A series of things that happened in Konoha made them feel desperate for a time. Looking at Jiraiya and Tsunade, they were extremely excited. They once again found a ray of light and saw hope in the darkness. The news of Jiraiya and Tsunade's return to Konoha spread throughout Konoha in an instant. Many people cried with joy and rushed towards the entrance of the village to greet them. Hiruzen Sarutobi, who had an arm cut off by Uchiha Obito's Susanoo Kamui and was still recuperating in the hospital, immediately ran towards the village entrance without caring about recuperating after hearing the news. The return of Jiraiya and Tsunade is a great thing for Konoha today. Konoha has just experienced life and death. There is turmoil at the top and bottom, and the morale of the army is disorganized. It is in great need of a leader. The five of them, Jiraiya and Tsunade, stood at the entrance of the village, looking around at the situation in the village. What they saw at a glance were ruins, potholes, and ravines tens of meters wide. It was a mess, without any signs of prosperity. The faces of several people were very solemn and gloomy, as if they could squeeze out water. They were extremely anxious and couldn't wait to know what happened in Konoha that led to this. What happened to the village? Jiraiya and Tsunade asked this question almost at the same time. The village, was attacked by Uchiha Madara. The patrol leader burst into tears. This time, too many of their companions and civilians died. What? Uchiha Madara? Jiraiya and the others' expressions changed drastically, and they were shocked and a little unbelievable. What on earth is going on? Didn't Uchiha Madara die in the hands of my grandfather a long time ago? Tsunade's face was full of doubts. The person who attacked Konoha wore a mask on his face and called himself Uchiha Madara. Looking at the ninjutsu he used, he is indeed a member of the Uchiha clan. And the masked man also snatched Kakashi's Sharingan, and then cast a ninjutsu that we have never seen before. The whole body is glowing with blue light. It is huge and has amazing defense. The patrol captain became more and more excited as he spoke, with a hint of fear in his eyes. As the words fell, all the important figures from the big families in Konoha village rushed to the entrance of the village, with Sarutobi Hiruzen leading the way. Looking at the visitor, Tsunade immediately asked, "Third generation, your arm, was the village really attacked by Uchiha Madara?" At the same time, Jiraiya, Naruto, and Shizune's eyes all fell on him, waiting for the answer. Only Xiao Li looked around, looking for the figure of Metkai. He glanced around and couldn't find it, and suddenly he felt an ominous premonition in his heart. He looked at Hyuga Neji and Tenten who were wrapped in white cloth. He didn't care about etiquette and did not hesitate to interrupt Sarutobi Hiruzen who was about to speak, and asked with a wry smile. "Neji, Tenten, where is Mr. Kai? Is he injured? That's why he didn't come over." After hearing this, Neji's face suddenly sank. He took a deep breath and lowered his head. When Tiantian heard the words, "Teacher Kai," he couldn't hold back any longer, tears kept falling, and he burst into tears. Kai, Teacher Kai, sacrificed." Tiantian was sobbing and choked when she said this sentence. This sentence seemed to have exhausted all her strength. After saying it, her vision went dark and she fainted. You said." Xiao Li was shocked, his pupils shrank rapidly, his heart twitched, and his expression was very painful. Cough cough cough. Xiao Li's whole body went limp and he was half kneeling on the ground, unable to believe that all this was true. "Impossible, this is absolutely impossible, Teacher Kai can't die." Xiao Li shook his head crazily, tears hitting the ground like a storm, making a crackling sound. At this moment, Xiao Li's mind went blank, his spirit was listless, as if his soul had been taken away. "Impossible, impossible, impossible." Xiao Li knelt on the ground with tears in his eyes, clenched his fists, and kept hammering the ground. "Teacher Li, Kai asked me to give you a message before he died." Nechi stepped forward and tried to help him up, but found that he couldn't help him. "What did he say? What did he say?" What did Teacher Kai say? Xiaoli grabbed Ningji's hand with all his strength, his eyes were red, and he fell into madness. Li, Neji patted his shoulder and said with some choking. Teacher Kai said that he has always been very optimistic about you and never thought that you could not be an excellent ninja. He treats you the same as he treats me and Tiantian. Neji kept taking deep breaths, his eyes were moist, and he was holding back tears. Teacher Kai. Xiaoli gradually loosened his grip on Neji's hand, feeling lost. Pictures of the past come to mind. Youth, this is our youth. At this moment, Xiaoli seemed to have lost the support of his soul, collapsed to the ground, and cried bitterly. Jiraiya, Naruto, Tsunade, and Shizune were all shocked when they heard the news. Looking at Xiaoli's appearance at this time, they felt a little sad. Jiraiya and Tsunade were the first to adjust their mentality and asked Hiruzen Sarutobi, how many people are attacking Konoha? Are the leaders sure to be Uchiha Madara? One person is most likely Uchiha Madara. He is very powerful and possesses the unique ninjutsu of the Uchiha clan, Susanoo. Sarutobi Hiruzen recalled the situation at that time, with a lot of horror on his face. If Kai hadn't fought tooth and nail to protect the village, I'm afraid Konoha would have completely disappeared from the entire ninja world. Susanoo. Jiraiya and Tsunade were shocked when they heard this. They had only seen ninjutsu in books, but they never expected that one day it would actually come to reality. With just these 4 words, they could imagine how tragic the battle was that day. Uchiha, what's the situation with Madara? Jiraiya asked. Sarutobi Hiruzen shook his head, a little unsure, and said. At that time, Kai opened the last gate of the 8 Gates armor formation to fight against Uchiha Madara, and the aftermath was enough to easily kill Jonin. We couldn't get close. After Kai died, we didn't find Madara's body, and we couldn't be sure whether he was dead or not. Quote. Listening to this, Jiraiya and Tsunade fell into deep thought. They were basically certain that the masked man who called himself Uchiha Madara was not dead, but was probably seriously injured. Susanoo, it's really tricky. Jiraiya secretly thought about countermeasures, ready to face the masked man's next attack at any time. Let's go to the village first. Jiraiya whispered, looked at Tsunade, and said, from now on, you will be the 5th Hokage of the village, and Konoha will leave it to you. Tsunade nodded, took a look at the village in a mess, and made up her mind. She must not just watch Konoha, which was founded by her grandfather, be bullied and destroyed. Naruto took a step forward and helped Xiaoli up. Xiaoli looked at Naruto's appearance, suddenly remembered a person, and shouted crazily. Teacher Kai can still be saved. Yi Fan will definitely be able to save Teacher Kai. Chapter 91. Xiaoli grabbed Naruto and asked frantically, Naruto, do you know where Mark is? Seeing that Naruto was silent, Xiaoli crawled up to Jiraiya again, pulled his clothes, and begged with choked sobs. Jiraiya-sama, you must know where Yi Fan is. Please tell me. I will go find him and ask him to save Teacher Kai. He must have a way. Jiraiya sighed, pulled him up, and remained silent. Xiaoli shook his head, shook off Jiraiya's hand, turned around and ran out in a random direction. He was extremely sad, and the powerful Yi Fan was like his life-saving straw, the last glimmer of hope left in his heart. Plum, Tsunade-ji, who had her back turned to him, yelled and slowly turned around to look at him. Xiaoli also froze at this time and stopped with dull eyes. Kai is dead. He is dead. Tsunade said expressionlessly, Kai will never be resurrected. This is the cruelty of war. Tsunade came to Xiaoli and placed her hands heavily on his shoulders. Her eyes became much gentler and her tone became much softer. Li, dead people cannot be resurrected, the only thing we can do is to pass on their will. Kai saved the village at the cost of his life. What we should do is to rebuild the village better, instead of being as decadent as you are now. Kai doesn't want to see you like this either. You are a man and you must cheer up. Quote. Xiaoli, who fell into a state of madness, slowly raised his head. Although tears were still flowing, his eyes became more determined. Teacher Kai, I will never let you down. Konoha, I will protect it. Xiaoli wiped his tears. Let's go home. Tsunade strode into the village, and everyone spontaneously made way for them. She was wearing a green dress with a big word, Gam, written on her back. Her eyes were bright and clear, as if her cheeks were full of determination when she was 24 or 5 years old. People looked at Tsunade's back, and suddenly there was an inexplicable sense of trust in their hearts. They firmly believe that Tsunade Hime, one of the legendary Sannin, can definitely lead Konoha to the top again, a peak that the third Hokage has never reached. A group of people followed behind Tsunade Hime. Although the village was now in ruins, there was an indescribable feeling in their hearts. That feeling is like rebirth. After Jiraiya and the others returned to the village, the first thing they did was to go to the mausoleum to pay homage to Metkai. After the ceremony, Tsunade Hime immediately called all the senior officials into the Hokage room for a meeting. She wanted to drastically reform Konoha. Shaoli did not follow. He leaned on Metkai's tombstone alone, wondering what he was thinking. Hyuga Ninki stood in the distance, waiting for Shaoli in a depressed mood. Jiraiya did not go to the meeting, but took Naruto to find a secluded place and continued to systematically study the Kane Senryu. He is improving his strength in the shortest possible time just to meet the uncertain situation that follows. At the same time, he unlocked 1/3 of the 8-sign seal in Naruto and taught him how to control the power of 9 tails. The moment the seal was released, a large amount of chakra overflowed from Naruto's body and filled the surrounding air. The red chakra contains the heart-stopping power of hatred. If there are ordinary people here, just the hatred that permeates the air will make them fall into a state of madness. Jiraiya looked at Naruto's current state with some surprise. This state made him feel strange. Even Jiraiya could clearly feel the hatred hidden in the 9 tails chakra. But the hatred and chakra seemed to be deliberately controlled and did not invade Naruto's body. That's really weird. Jiraiya pinched his chin, puzzled. In his impression, all the tailed beasts would desperately try to occupy Jinchuriki's body the moment the chakra was leaked. 9 tails, on the other hand, didn't seem to have any intention of occupying Naruto's consciousness, not at all. Looking at this scene, he remembered Naruto's state when he used turtle-style Qigong. Now that he calmed down and thought about it carefully, he seemed to be in this state at that time. I thought that was just an example, but now it seems that it is not. Naruto, do you still remember the feeling when you fought against pain? How did you mobilize the 9 tails chakra in your body at that time? Jiraiya asked. Naruto thought for a moment. Kaido, pervy sage, my mind entered a strange corridor at that time. There is a demon fox locked at the end of the corridor. I asked it to pay the rent, and it lent me its power. Quote. Jiraiya was a little in disbelief. His expression was very strange. It's that simple. Yes. Then can you still mobilize the 9 tails chakra now? Yes. Naruto nodded. Then you try. Jiraiya nodded, indicating that he could start. Naruto nodded without thinking too much. He closed his eyes slightly and entered that strange state again. At the same time, one tail after another continued to shoot out from Naruto's body. In just a few seconds, there were 5 tails, and Naruto was still awake and not under control at all. Pervy sage, is that so? Naruto opened his eyes and asked. Jiraiya nodded in confusion. When did 9 tails change his gender and be so obedient? Logically speaking, 9 tails should be the most difficult to tame among all tailed beasts. Being in such a calm state made Jiraiya feel a little unconfident. Could it be that 9 tails took over Naruto's body unexpectedly? Jiraiya thought. Glancing at the necklace in his hand, Jiraiya continued to ask, can you mobilize more 9 tails chakra? Naruto nodded without hesitation and closed his eyes again. Fox, it's time to pay the rent. Naruto shouted, which shocked Jiraiya. At this time, in his spiritual world, 9 tails glared at him, feeling very unhappy about being imprisoned. Alas, 9 tails sighed deeply and continued to lend Naruto his power helplessly. In an instant, the number of tails on Naruto's body increased from 5 to 9. The extremely powerful pressure spread everywhere and swept away, and the surrounding land and trees were all destroyed in an instant. Jiraiya couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth when he looked at Naruto, who still didn't go crazy despite having 9 tails. 9 tails, it seems that they have really changed their gender. In the spiritual world, 9 tails glared at Naruto fiercely and said, Kid, I also have a name. My name is Kurama. Please call me by my name next time. And, next time you want to borrow my power, please speak more gently. Hey, I didn't expect this stinky fox like you to have a name. Naruto looked surprised. Ninetales glanced at him, curled up silently, and closed his eyes. It feels like Naruto's character is getting more and more crooked, and he's nothing like before. Naruto chuckled and waved his hand. Goodbye Kurama, see you next time. His consciousness returned to reality again. Naruto, do you feel anything special, such as physical discomfort or something? Jiraiya asked. Naruto shook his head. I just feel that my body is full of power, like I can move mountains and seas. Jiraiya fell into deep thought, as long as he didn't feel any other discomfort. After a few seconds of silence, Jiraiya smiled and said, Naruto, let me see how strong you are now. Use the turtle-style Qigong wave to shoot towards the sky. Okay, pervy sage. Naruto, who was sitting on the ground, jumped up and immediately took a stance, about to fire into the sky. Where to hit? Naruto looked at the blue sky with some confusion, glanced at the moon looming under the sun, and said with a smile. That's it. I don't know if I can beat it. After finding the experimental target, Naruto raised the corners of his mouth, showed a slight smile, and put on a posture. Turtle, pie. Naruto gradually closed his hands and shouted loudly. As the chakra gathered, Naruto's whole body shone with red light, and powerful power swept in all directions. Click. The ground with a radius of tens of meters was completely shattered at this moment, with cracks of all sizes covering every corner. This power was too strong. Jiraiya glanced at Naruto and the changes around him, and retreated quickly, his eyes remaining on Naruto as he retreated. Just in the preparation stage of the turtle Qigong wave, terrifying pressure broke out across all directions. Jiraiya felt a little surprised and a little excited. Although he didn't know why Naruto was suddenly able to control the power of Ninetales at will, it didn't seem to be a bad thing now. At least judging from the current situation, it can only be good for Naruto. Chi, gong, wave. Naruto shouted loudly, and the ground beneath his feet suddenly collapsed, a huge dark pit appeared, and the entire Konoha shook. At the same time, a huge red light wave suddenly erupted from the palm of his hand and flew towards the moon at an extremely fast speed. The speed of the light wave was so fast that it seemed to have escaped the gravity of the earth and broke through the sky in the blink of an eye. For a moment, the sky flashed with red light, like the red glow of the rising sun. The huge movement attracted the attention of everyone in Konoha village, and everyone immediately looked up at the red beam of light. In the Hokage room, everyone who was having a meeting also went out immediately and looked up at the sky. What the hell is this? Everyone except Tsunade was stunned. The beam of light that appeared out of thin air was really eye-catching. They looked towards the direction where the light beam was generated, their hearts trembling. Even though they were far away, they could still clearly feel the destructive power of the light beam. If that beam of light was an attack directed at Konoha, they couldn't imagine how Konoha would be destroyed. Sir Fifth Hokage, something terrible seems to have happened over there. I will go over now to see what is going on. Spokesperson Anbu took a step forward and asked urgently. He was very worried that the sudden appearance of mysterious power would threaten the safety of Konoha. The rest of Konoha's senior officials also had serious expressions on their faces, and they all wanted to know what happened as soon as possible. Tsunade Haim watched the red light gradually disappear, feeling shocked in her heart, but her face remained calm. Naruto's technique seems to be much more powerful than the last time. Tsunade secretly thought. She still remembered the last time Naruto used this move to hit Pain. Although her mind was extremely confused at the time, it didn't mean that she didn't see it. Yi-fan, what kind of person are you? Is this technique really picked up by you, as Jiraiya said? Feeling the oppressive feeling of losing her training, Tsunade thought of the people Jiraiya had been mentioning to her during this period of time. She became more and more curious about Yi-fan, and couldn't help but want to uncover the mystery wrapped around Yi-fan. I really look forward to meeting you. Tsunade sighed secretly, and then stopped the Anbu spokesperson who was about to step out of the Hokage room. Come back, don't worry about things over there. Jiraiya and the others are practicing over there. Let's continue the meeting. As soon as the words fell, Tsunade returned to the main position and continued to talk about the policy for the redevelopment of Konoha, also focusing on Sunagakure village and Kumogakure village. Sunagakure village invaded Konoha. Kumogakure village forced the Hyuga clan to hand over their Byakugan, these accounts should be settled. Tsunade had made up her mind. Once the situation in Konoha stabilized, she would immediately invite them to Konoha on the grounds of celebrating her ascending to the position of Hokage. She had to do this now. The current situation in Konoha was really bad. It could be described as internal and external troubles. Not only are there problems within the village, but the outside world is also watching with eager eyes. Almost all villages are looking for opportunities to get a piece of Konoha's pie. She must tell other villages in a tough way that although the situation in Konoha is not good, not everyone can worry about it. After the general matters were explained, Tsunade Haim looked at Sarutobi Hiruzen and said decisively. Third generation, you have worked hard all your life. You should take more rest in the future. If you really can't stay idle, go to the ninja school to take care of the children. You don't need to worry about other things. Hearing this, Sarutobi Hiruzen smiled lightly and nodded. Seeing Tsunade being so decisive, he felt relieved. Konoha might indeed be much stronger than her in her hands. Seeing that Sarutobi Hiruzen had no objection, Tsunade continued to talk about other things. In the devastated forest, Naruto was half kneeling on the ground, his forehead covered with steaming beads of sweat, and he was breathing heavily. The wave of turtle-style Qigong just now had almost drained all the chakra from his body. Not even a drop of the chakra that Nine Tails lent him was left. Naruto, are you okay? Jiraiya walked up to him, glanced at his hanging wrist, and frowned. Naruto smiled bitterly. Pervy sage, I seem to have played too hard just now. My body seemed unable to support such a powerful force, and both palms were broken. Be careful next time. Jiraiya felt a little distressed and led him towards Konoha Hospital. On the way, Nine Tails' voice sounded in Naruto's mind. Kid, don't be too greedy in the future, I won't protect you next time. The moment the turtle Qigong wave was launched, Nine Tails smelled an extremely dangerous smell and immediately used chakra to protect his body. If it hadn't taken action in time, Naruto's body would have been counterattacked by the powerful force and turned into pieces in an instant. But even if it took action, it could not protect Naruto's palms. One can imagine how powerful it was. Naruto also realized this, smiled and said, "Thank you, Kurama." 9. When Nine Tails heard this sentence, his heart trembled, and a special feeling came to his mind. It can no longer remember how many years it has been since no one called its name. After a few seconds of silence, Nine Tails snorted, slowly closed his eyes and fell asleep. In Konoha Hospital, Sasuke also saw the red beam of light. The powerful power shocked him so much that he was still throbbing while lying on the bed. He was thinking, who can possess such terrifying power, is it Yi-fan? Sasuke, are you feeling better? Naruto said hello as he passed by. Sasuke glanced at Naruto, whose hands were broken, and a disdainful smile appeared on his lips. He didn't reply and let Sakura close the door. On the moon, a man with pale skin and who looked to be about the same age as Naruto stood beside a huge crater that was hundreds of meters wide and had no idea how deep it was, with an unhappy expression on his face. The man's facial features were regular and he had an earthly aura. The only shortcoming was that his eyes were tightly closed and he had no eyeballs. The man looked around like a normal person, as if the lack of eyes had no effect on his vision, examining the aura remaining in the giant pit. The same breath, the second time. The pale-skinned man spoke indifferently, the breath on his body became colder and colder, and he turned to look at an aqua-blue planet. He was a little curious as to who had this level of power on that junk planet. Could it be that the natives discovered some kind of power that they shouldn't have discovered? Everyone in the Zong family deserves to die. They actually want to protect those who only want to fight wars. Now they dare to destroy my home. They deserve to die. There is really no need to exist in that kind of world. The young man whispered, as if he could destroy everyone on the planet at any time. Looking at the planet, a smile slowly appeared on the boy's ice-like cheek. He thought of a girl he had seen in his childhood. The corner of the man's mouth raised and he murmured, "Hinata, I wanted to wait until you grow up before marrying you back, but now it seems I can't wait. You can grow up slowly on the moon." As he spoke, you could clearly see a smile on his face, a smile that came from the heart. As soon as he finished speaking, the man walked to the other side of the moon and made a special seal. A green light lit up and slowly closed to form a circle. The center of the circle is covered with special lines and sparkles. The man slowly walked into the circle, green light shone out, wrapped around his body, and disappeared in an instant. As the man disappeared, the green light gradually dispersed, as if the circle had never appeared. Under the dark side of the moon, there is a dark shadow hiding in the darkness and watching all this silently. Looking at the place where the man disappeared, Haiying was overjoyed. He really knows how to activate the teleportation array. After a long time, the black shadow gradually appeared, and another man with pale skin and who looked much younger appeared and used the same method to activate the teleportation array. A burst of green light surrounded him, and his figure disappeared above the moon. Outside Konoha village, Yifan appeared with Gaara. After 3 days, they returned to this place. Along the way, Yifan saw the sorrow of many people at the bottom. Almost all of those people were homeless due to the war. Among them, there are poor people and some extremely vicious people. Those extremely vicious people are no match for the great ninjas. They are bullied by the great ninjas and act like dogs to the great ninjas. In turn, they bully ordinary people who have no strength and let those ordinary people act like dogs to them. Yifan sent all the extremely vicious people he met to the west. On the way back to Konoha, Yifan also met a very interesting little fat man. When they first met, the little fat man was helping those kind-hearted ordinary people and killed dozens of vicious ninjas. Yifan was interested in being able to possess that kind of power at such a young age. After chatting with him, I learned a few things. The little fat man who looked like a porcelain doll claimed to be a descendant of the Senju clan, Senju Yi. When he learned that Yifan was also going to Konoha, he went with him. Along the way, Senju Yi kept asking about the current situation of Konoha and other villages, like a person who had never walked around in this world. Yifan had discovered this a long time ago. Feeling the special power hidden in the little fat man's body, he guessed something. However, Yifan did not expose the little fat man, but answered according to his words, wanting to see what this person who did not seem to belong to this world was going to do. Along the way, the two chatted happily. Gaara and Shukaku watched the two of them talking, often feeling so out of place and falling into deep self-doubt. Grandpa, does he not care about us anymore? Obviously Grandpa has been beating us violently. Why do I feel a little distressed when I see him talking to Senju Yi? Where did the little fat man come from? We are obviously Grandpa's companions along the way. Gaara and Shukaku were thinking wildly and jealous, and many times they wanted to crush the little fat man to death. However, this is just a thought, they don't have the courage. Putting aside the fact that Yifan and the little fat man had a great conversation, even the surname Senju is enough to scare people. Killing, not killing, Gaara and Shukaku often deliberately interrupt in order not to alienate Yifan, but Yifan said that he did not want to pay attention to them. Gaara and Shukaku were very frustrated when they couldn't get a response after interrupting. So love will disappear, right? Looking at the bumpy, rain-filled mud road outside the gate of Konoha, Gaara knew that the opportunity to show off had come. Grandpa, please wait for a moment. The road ahead is too bad. Be careful of getting your shoes wet. Gaara and Shukaku looked at each other and worked together to wrap the sand with tailed beast chakra and pave the road. In just the blink of an eye, the bumpy dirt road transformed into a sand road with tailed beast chakra, the only one in the entire ninja world. The moment the sand wrapped in the tailed beast chakra appeared, the little fat Senju Yi suddenly looked at Gaara, the shock in his eyes flashed away. He didn't expect that this young man who had been a grandson all his life was actually a Jinchuriki, and could also mobilize the tailed beast chakra so casually. Senju Yi looked at Yifan. Although he seemed calm on the surface, there was a storm in his heart and he could not calm down for a long time. He had already guessed that Yifan was not a simple person, but he never thought that Jinchuriki would be so extraordinary as to be his grandson. If you peek through the tube, you can see a Madara. The little fat man Senju Yi took a few deep breaths, and then the fear in his heart gradually subsided. Gaara and Shukaku could clearly see the flash of horror in the little fat man's eyes, and looked at him proudly, as if to say, "Boy, don't think that because you are a descendant of the Senju clan, you can have a close relationship with Grandpa. The power we have is the sandbag that Grandpa needs. Let's go, Grandpa, the road is repaired." Gaara made a gesture of invitation with a smile on his face. Yi Fan nodded, with a slight coldness in his eyes. He sensed the situation in the village and knew that Naruto and Jiraiya were in the hospital now. What happened in Konoha while I was gone? Why was Naruto injured? Why did Metkai die in battle? When they reached the entrance of the village, the ninjas patrolling Konoha greeted Yi Fan with great respect. Yi Fan was very strong, and this matter had already spread throughout the Leaf Village. They did not dare to smile playfully with Yi Fan, and there was a trace of fear hidden in their eyes. The little fat man Senju looked at this scene and felt that Yi Fan was even more unfathomable. He is obviously just a boy of 13 or 14 years old, why does he have such high prestige? The ninja guarding the door, seeing Yi Fan coming back, hurriedly opened the door and invited him into the village with a smile. Although there was a Jinchuriki from another village and an unidentified little fat man beside him, they did not stop him. Yi Fan was able to bring back Uchiha Itachi, the annihilated clan, and the famous tailless beast Kisame Kazaki back to the village. Isn't it reasonable to bring a Jinchuriki and a stranger back to the village? After entering the village, Yi Fan went straight to the hospital. Tsunade-ji learned that he was back and rushed to the hospital immediately. Konoha Hospital. Sasuke was lying on the bed, laughing from time to time. When he thought that Naruto was also injured, he couldn't help but feel happy. Naruto and Yi Fan got too close, which was a case of hatred. Naruto, after my injury is healed, the first thing I will do is teach you a lesson. Sasuke thought to himself, feeling pleased. Seeing how happy Sasuke was today, Sakura felt better and had a bright smile on her face. As for the injured Naruto, she had long since forgotten him. She didn't even have a word of concern, let alone treat him like he was staying with Sasuke. Yi Fan, Itachi, although I am not your opponent now, one day, I will let you understand what real pain is. I will repay you 1,000 times the pain you have caused me. Sasuke's eyes darkened and he murmured softly. He felt that the only meaning of his life was revenge. Sakura sighed after hearing this. She has heard Sasuke say this every day during this period, which shows how outrageous his hatred for Mark and Itachi is. Sometimes, Sasuke would even talk in his sleep at night and yell about killing Mark and Itachi. However, during this period of time, he did not call Yi Fan God anymore. I don't know why. Sasuke, it's almost time for dinner. Please wait a moment while I go out to get your meal. Saying that, Xiaoying immediately set off, and as soon as she opened the door, she met Mark who was coming towards her. There are two people surrounding Yi Fan, one is Gaara and the other is Senju. Sakura froze on the spot, a little confused. She didn't understand why Gaara, the handsome young man who used to look extremely cold, became like this now, as if he was licking Mark. Am I dazzled? Sakura swallowed and shook her head. She couldn't believe the scene in front of her. While she was in a daze, a voice came from inside the house. Sakura, what are you standing there for? Hurry and get the food. If I don't eat enough, how will I have the strength to take revenge? How will I have the strength to kill Yi Fan and Itachi? Sasuke was in a good mood and rarely scolded Sakura directly. Even if his tone was bad, he was much better than before. Upon hearing this, Sakura quickly turned around and signaled Sasuke to stop talking. Sasuke didn't know why. He frowned and said, "Are you having epilepsy? Go quickly. I want to get well soon and kill Yi Fan and Itachi." He was getting impatient. Xiaoying's face froze, her head was buzzing, she locked the door after thinking about it, turned to Yi Fan and smiled bitterly. Uchiha Yi Fan, have you returned to the village? Are you here to see Naruto? Sakura was sweating coldly. She knew that Mark was not a good guy. If he said he wanted to do something, he would really do it. When Senju heard this name, his heart was churning. He didn't expect that Yi Fan was actually a member of the Uchiha clan. According to the information he knew, there were not many members of the Uchiha clan left. To have such great prestige in Konoha, their strength must not be underestimated. He has already seen Yi Fan's status in Konoha. Along the way, almost all the ninjas who met him saluted with unusual respect, and there was also a hint of fear in their eyes. Seeing that Mark didn't speak, Xiaoying showed an embarrassed smile. Ah, there's no one inside, it's not what you heard. When she said this, even she felt a little unconfident and her scalp was numb. In order to prevent Mark from beating Sasuke, she risked her life. Yi Fan glanced at her and asked, "Where are you going?" "Ah, I'm just about to get lunch for Naruto." Halfway through the words, Sakura thought of the good relationship between Mark and Naruto, and immediately used Naruto as a shield. "Which ward is Naruto in, this one?" Yi Fan pointed to the room behind her, his voice was cold. "Ah, it's not this room. Naruto is here, he is." Sakura was speechless for a moment and couldn't speak. She didn't even know which ward Naruto lived in. Looking at Sakura, who was talking about running around, Yi Fan's eyes became colder and colder, and he became more and more displeased with her. "Although I hated Sakura very much before, the best I could do was ignore her." Now Sakura was clearly doing things for others, but using Naruto as a shield, which made Mark completely angry. Yi Fan strode towards Xiaoying. His eyes were cold and bone-chilling. He raised his right hand and gave her a big pussy. Snapped. Sakura's body flew backwards and hit the wall hard, with teeth and blood flying in her mouth. Before she could land, Yi Fan's figure arrived again, with another big backhand. In an instant, Sakura's face swelled into a pig's head, and her mother didn't even recognize her. Yi Fan's movements did not stop, and he kicked her in the stomach. Her ribs instantly fell apart and broke. His body was bent like a shrimp and flew out, smashing the door of Sasuke's ward, and lying on the ground vomiting blood. The screams resounded throughout the hospital and were very harsh, attracting the attention of many people who immediately ran out to see what was going on. "Since you like staying with Sasuke so much, spend more time with him here." Yi Fan entered the room and kicked Xiaoying's hands off. Sasuke looked at Yi Fan, who suddenly appeared, and finally understood why Sakura suddenly locked the door. He looked at Yi Fan shivering, feeling very frightened in his heart, completely losing the high-spiritedness he had before. Tsunade Hime, who came to the hospital from the Hokage room, happened to see the broken door and the boy with the word, "love," carved on his face, and immediately recognized who he was. "I just destroyed your Konoha not long ago, and now you dare to come to the hospital and act wild. Do you really think that I, Konoha, am a soft persimmon that can be manipulated? One-tail Jinchuriki, right? What a big one-tail Jinchuriki." Tsunade Hime's face was so gloomy that she could squeeze out tears, and she was furious. A murderous aura that almost turned into reality filled the corridor. The little fat man turned to look at the murderous Tsunade Hime, his hair stood on end, and he immediately distanced himself from her. Gaara opened his mouth and was about to explain, but Tsunade Hime didn't give him the chance. "Is one-tail Jinchuriki strong? Let me see how strong you are to be so confident." Tsunade Hime was in front of Gaara in an instant, raised her hand and punched him. Boom! The whole hospital, no, within 100 meters radius, was trembling. The powerful force punched Gaara into the ground hard, causing him to bleed from all his orifices. Suna. Gaara opened his mouth halfway, but was immediately punched shut. Puff! Gaara's body flew backwards, drawing a huge ravine on the ground. The huge movement made most people in the hospital panic. The first thought that came to their minds was, has Konoha been invaded again? Jiraiya and Naruto, with solemn faces, immediately appeared. Seeing that it was Gaara, Jiraiya also rushed forward and started a mixed doubles match with Tsunade. When Yi Fan stepped out of the hospital door, he saw the dying Gaara. Gaara didn't dare to fight back, he couldn't explain it, and he felt miserable. Tsunade punched Gaara again, sending Gaara flying back to where he was. He immediately followed up and punched Gaara to the flesh. Since Yi Fan was on the second floor, Tsunade and the others were beating Gaara right under the hole he made, and Yi Fan saw it clearly. He didn't intend to stop. After all, some scenery could not be seen every day. While he was admiring the scenery, Naruto spotted him and shouted very happily, "Brother Yi Fan, you are back." Hearing this, Jiraiya and Tsunade stopped their mixed doubles match and looked up at Mark from the hole. Naruto, who was extremely happy, rushed towards Yi Fan, opened his arms and gave him a bear hug. Yi Fan didn't step firmly and stumbled and fell from the hole. Naruto hit Gaara's body. Yi Fan felt that his eyes were darkened, and he felt that he had entered a gentle land that he had never been to before. It was so soft, warm, and happy. Tsunade stared at Yi Fan, whose head was buried between her pair of giant pandas. His face was covered with black lines and he was breathing heavily. Inside the hospital building, the dust covering the eyes gradually dispersed, and people's vision returned to clarity. Equals QVQ. Hash. There was no movement. Were the intruders subdued by Lord Fifth Hokage? People who were not too concerned about the excitement walked towards the big hole in the corridor on the second floor. The little fat man Senjuyi was also mixed in the crowd, wanting to see what was going on. That Jinchuriki wouldn't have been beaten to death by that beautiful woman, right? Why couldn't he hear any sound? The little fat man squeezed into the crowd and stretched his head to see the specific situation clearly. 30 or 40 people suddenly gathered around. The corridor, which was not particularly wide, now became very narrow and blocked. Everyone was squeezing their heads to watch. It was bustling and extremely noisy. Don't squeeze in the back. I'm almost squeezed out by you, and I'm still wearing a cane. Hey, don't touch me. I'm not interested in men. I'm a serious straight man. What is the situation down there? Let the brothers in front tell you. Don't hide it. Fifth generation Sama is indeed one of the legendary Sannin. You are so fierce. That bullshit one-tailed Jinchuriki is incapable of fighting back in her hands. Various sounds filled the corridors. People were particularly excited, their eyes were blazing, and their hearts felt a lot more settled. Konoha has experienced too many things during this period, and the first thing Tsunadeheim did when she came to power greatly inspired their hearts. After the people in the front row saw clearly what was going on downstairs, their pupils dilated, their mouths closed, and they backed away with their eyes covered, as if they had seen something terrible and were frightened. Almost everyone in the front row had the same reaction, and some people were inadvertently pushed over while retreating. What do you mean by your sudden retreat? Did you take the wrong medicine? The people behind kept complaining and looked unhappy, but this also gave them an opportunity. They took advantage of this opportunity and squeezed to the front. After seeing the situation clearly, their reaction was the same as the first group of people, covering their eyes and quickly retreating. 3 or 4 groups of people in a row were like this, and some people didn't believe in evil, but wanted to go up and have a look for themselves. After seeing it, they all had the same reaction, as if they were carved from the same mold. In an instant, the hospital corridor, which was as noisy as a wet market in the early morning, became so silent that you could hear a needle drop. Everyone stared with big eyes and small eyes, and some regretted that they had squeezed their heads to see. When they thought of the murderous look Tsunadeheim looked at them, they felt their hearts trembling. It was so terrible, so terrifying. Everyone's mouths twitched, and they stayed where they were at a loss. The little fat man Senjuyi looked at the scene downstairs and took a breath. He had endless admiration for Mark and silently gave a thumbs up. It's so fierce. When the little fat guy thinks of Tsunadeheim beating Gaara, and Mark using that posture with Tsunade. I really admire him. In the corridor on the first floor, in the big pit, there was silence. Except for Tsunadeheim, whose face was gloomy, everyone was petrified. Gaara, who was pressed by Naruto, looked at Yifan blankly, admiring him in his heart. He is worthy of being a grandpa. He is indeed extraordinary. This is really fierce. Although Gaara's hands and ribs were broken, he seemed to feel no pain at this time and watched carefully. He asked Shukaku to draw this scene with chakra in his spiritual world as quickly as possible and give it to Yifan as a gift later. This kind of gift is unique in this world. It is hard to buy for $1,000 and hard to find for $10,000. Time passed bit by bit, and the picture seemed to be still. This posture had been maintained for 2 minutes. Tsunade-ji looked displeased, and her murderous gaze fell on Mark. She wanted to see how long this brat lasted. It's too fierce, it's too fierce. It deserves to be called Grandpa. It seems that I will have to call Tsunade-sama Grandma from now on. Gaara thought, it was too long to imagine. The breeze blew through the window, blowing everyone's hair, and the sun shone on Yifan's body, which was so warm. His body was warm, and his head was even warmer and softer. Hiss. Jiraiya reacted, his eyes widened, and he yelled, Yifan, you at hash and asterisk. The sound of yelling and cursing broke the silence for a moment, resounding throughout the hospital, echoing continuously and lingering for a long time. The echoing curses were the hospital's limit, not Jiraiya's. Jiraiya's furious voice made Yifan wake up from a dream, and his mind suddenly became clear. What is this? With my state of mind, I am almost addicted to it. Is it the top genjutsu I have never seen? Yi Fan shook his head between the cracks. The giant panda kept shaking, layer after layer like water waves. Bang bang bang. The giant panda hit Yi Fan on the face, causing him to wake up completely and pull out his head. It seems that I am still not immune to all genjutsu, Yi Fan thought secretly. When he saw the situation in front of him clearly, he was dumbfounded. This horse was not genjutsu at all. Snow white skin, very charming, very beautiful face, long legs under tight pants, especially the pair of shining giant pandas. Yi Fan realized that things were not simple. Tsunade-ji put her hands on her hips and looked at Yi Fan expressionlessly. Her eyes seemed calm but full of murderous intent. Mark met her gaze, glanced at Jiraiya with exploding long hair, and took a breath of cold air. That, if I said I just got hit by genjutsu, would you believe it? Tsunade-ji took a step forward, and Yi Fan retreated until he reached the wall and had no way to retreat. Tsunade-ji, whose face was terrifyingly calm, put one hand on the wall and looked at Mark with a smile, hiding a knife in her smile. She stretched out her other hand to wipe his nosebleed and asked, "Are you comfortable, kid?" Yi Fan swallowed a sip of saliva and glanced at it. The giant panda looked even more coquettish under the red blood, and had a special sense of beauty. Ah, it should be quite comfortable, right? He told the truth. As soon as he finished speaking, Tsunade-hime, who instantly activated the Hyakua no Jutsu, and Jiraiya, who entered Sage mode, took action. A complete childhood requires mixed doubles. Jiraiya and Tsunade-hime are now giving Yi Fan a perfect childhood. He is only a child of more than 100 months old. In the Hokage room, Tsunade-ji sat on the main seat, Jiraiya sat beside her, and Yi Fan, Gaara, Naruto, and Senju-yi sat around the table. Tsunade-ji glanced at Yi Fan, who was unscathed, and thought to herself, Jiraiya did not lie to her. Yi Fan was indeed extremely strong, and even with all his strength, he was not hurt at all. Ahem, Tsunade-sama, let me introduce someone to you. Yi Fan spoke first and pointed at the little fat man. The little fat man Senju-yi looked at Yi Fan with a malicious look on his face, feeling anxious and uneasy, and his face instantly turned as pale as paper. Along the way, he and Yi Fan had boasted about something awesome, and he knew it best. After seeing Tsunade-ji's violence, the little fat man felt that something was wrong. He quickly stepped forward and took Yi Fan's hand, saying with a smile on his face, "There's no need to be so grand. I'm just a small person, don't introduce me." As he spoke, the little fat man winked at Yi Fan and begged Yi Fan to let him go. Yi Fan turned a blind eye and completely ignored his hint. He patted him on the shoulder and said with a smile, "It must be introduced in a grand manner. Your status is worthy of it." "Are you kidding me? My great Yi Fan has been beaten, you little fat guy still want to escape." Yi Fan smiled and said, "Tsunade-sama, even though he is just a child, his status is extremely important. Speaking of which, you have to call him Grandpa." As soon as these words came out, the whole place was silent, even the sound of breathing could be heard clearly, and the atmosphere became subtle. The little fat man turned pale and buried his head on the table, trying to escape from this place. Tsunade-Jiryu's eyebrows were raised, the symbol of the 100 Heroes technique on her forehead was emitting purple light, and her eyes were filled with murderous intent. Although she didn't speak, it seemed like she had said everything. Facing her murderous gaze, Yi Fan smiled and explained, "Tsunade-sama, don't look at me, these are not what I said. The little fat guy's name is Senju-yi, and he claims to be from the same generation as First Hokage's father, so you should really call him Grandpa." Yi Fan looked innocent. Tsunade-ji's murderous gaze shifted to the little fat man, and murderous intent filled the entire Hokage room. She had been silent and spoke. "Did you say that? If I can't give you enough evidence to prove your identity, I will let you enter Konoha vertically and get out horizontally." Hearing this, the little fat man was so frightened that he gradually waved his hands, with a look of fear on his face, but he couldn't get the words out of his mouth. He could already imagine what kind of storm he would face next. "Smelly Yi Fan, you are so disrespectful." He secretly arranged it in his heart. With a smile on his face, Yi Fan found a comfortable position to lean on and prepare to watch the show. "Say," Tsunade-hime spoke again and stood up slowly. She was already a little impatient. No matter who it is, calling her great-grandfather is a huge insult. Doesn't this mean that Senju Hashirama, the mighty god of the ninja world, also wants to call the fat man in front of him uncle? The little fat man Senju Yi's forehead was covered with sweat, his back was like a gleam, and he was restless. He could already feel Tsunade Haime's impatience. If I can't say one more, I'm afraid it will be dangerous today. Glancing at Tsunade-ji with a guilty conscience, the little fat man said bravely, Sir Fifth Hokage, what I said is that I am a branch of your great-grandfather's generation. Maybe Yi Fan heard it wrong. The little fat man's voice was trembling. Although he felt that Tsunade Haime was immune to death, it still hurt. Hey, Senju Yi, I heard you right. What you said is that the god of the ninja world, Senju Hashirama, has to call you uncle when he meets you. You have said this more than once. Gaara was nearby at the time. He can testify. Tsunade-ji glanced at Gaara and watched him nod. Tsunade-ji understood. Boom, Tsunade Haime slapped the table, and the table fell into pieces and hit the ground with a bang. At the same time, Tsunade Haime's figure disappeared, and when she reappeared, she was already outside the Hokage building with the little fat man. The little fat man's screams kept ringing out, blood was spilled, and he was beaten into disgrace. Yi Fan and the others walked to the windowsill and watched the show with their chins propped up. Tsunade-sama is worthy of being the fifth Hokage. She is so thoughtful. Before beating the little fat guy, she summoned Katsuyu to attach to him in advance. Yi Fan said with a smile. I guess Tsunade is worried that she will beat him to death if she is not careful, or maybe she wants to beat him for a while longer. Jiraiya said. Grandma Tsunade, it's really. Naruto was stunned. Gaara's face was full of smiles. He didn't know why, but he always felt very happy when he saw the fat boy being beaten like this. It was so refreshing. Seeing Senju Yi being beaten until all her orifices were bleeding, her teeth were flying, her nose was bruised and her face was swollen, Yi Fan smiled and said, Tsunade-sama doesn't seem to be bleeding anymore. Jiraiya nodded. During the time they returned to Konoha, Tsunade Haime was completely cured of the hemorrhage. Immediately, he looked at Mark and said, Naruto can use Nine Tails chakra at will without any side effects, did you know? Jiraiya had a hunch in his heart that Mark definitely knew the reason for this. Gaara and Shukaku heard this and their eyes suddenly fell on Yi Fan. They both had a strong feeling that the reason why Naruto was able to use Nine Tails chakra at will was probably because Yi Fan used it against them. Method. Naruto also felt very strange. He couldn't use it at will before, but he could borrow it at will after having a meal with Mark. Yi Fan chuckled and asked, about how much Nine Tails chakra can Naruto mobilize now? Nine Tails, without any side effects, and the consciousness is very clear. Jiraiya said. Yi Fan smiled when he heard this and patted Naruto on the shoulder, with a hint of relief in his eyes. Jiraiya and the others looked at Mark's appearance and already had the answer in their hearts, and Jiraiya felt a lot more relieved. Although I don't understand how Yi Fan did it, it is a good thing after all. The moment Yi Fan patted Naruto's shoulder, the Nine Tails in Naruto's body suddenly opened his eyes and backed away quickly, swallowing saliva and panicking. It doesn't look like the strongest tailed beast other than Ten Tails at all. Instead, it looks like a panicked Erha. Naruto asked me to borrow my strength. I'm very generous. Please don't come in. I'm feeling a little unwell these days and can't accept guests. Nine Tails knew that Yi Fan could hear it speak and hurriedly explained. After that battle, it analyzed many things and came to the conclusion that Yi Fan's strength was probably far superior to Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara. It is very possible that it has reached the level of Sage of Six Paths, or even better. Not bad, Yi Fan seemed to be saying to Naruto, but Nine Tails knew very well that this sentence was said to himself. After hearing this, Nine Tails felt a little relieved. It didn't want to really die. Nine Tails scanned the surroundings through Naruto's eyes and felt Shukaku's aura on Gaara's body. Seeing Gaara's respect for Yi Fan, Nine Tails instantly understood that Shukaku might have experienced Yi Fan's horror, and it might even be worse than him. Yi Fan looked at Naruto, as if his eyes were shot directly into his spiritual world, and said, in a few days, you will practice with me for a while. When Naruto heard this, he smiled broadly and agreed without hesitation. When Nine Tails heard this, his reaction was very different, and he was stunned for a moment. Gaara and Shukaku looked at Naruto with some pity. To be more precise, they looked at the 9 tails in his body. At this moment, their hearts were much more balanced, and finally there was someone who could share some of the burden for them. Drink. Tsunade Hime jumped into the air, clenched her fists, and struck out with great force. Her green coat fluttered in the wind and made a hunting sound. The large word, gamble, was very eye-catching and eye-catching. Boom. The moment his fist came into contact with the little fat man Senjuyi, a huge force pushed him to the ground and hit him hard on the ground. With a click, with the little fat man as the center of the circle, the earth continued to shatter in all directions, and spider web-like cracks continued to spread. The little fat boy Senjuyi had a bruised nose and swollen face, and many bones in his body were broken. PFF, this is really cruel. The little fat man wailed, and a severe pain surged into his heart, feeling like his body was about to burst. Since that battle, he hasn't felt this kind of pain for many years. Despair. Tsunade landed firmly, her high heels slightly inserted into the soil, her face was heavy, and a trace of surprise flashed in her eyes. Yi Fan is a monster, and the people with him are also monsters. Tsunade secretly sighed. Although she did not use all her strength, she still used 2/3 of her strength. And even so, it was only in the final blow that the man who claimed to be a descendant of the Senju clan used chakra for body protection. Tsunade Hime stared at the little fat man and narrowed her eyes slightly. As the best medical expert in the entire ninja world, she had already determined that the little fat man in front of her was definitely older than he looked. The little fat man was lying in the huge pit, vomiting blood from time to time. Katsuyu, who was lying on his shoulder, returned to Tsunade's shoulder. Tsunade-sama, he is not a descendant of the Senju clan. Katsuyu's tone was very certain. The reason why Tsunade summoned Katsuyu was that on the one hand she was worried that she would beat the little fat man to death with excessive force, and on the other hand she wanted to confirm the little fat man's identity through Katsuyu's special ability. If the little fat man is indeed a member of the Senju clan, he can naturally be allowed to stay in Konoha. If he is not, it will depend on the situation. Not a member of my clan. What is his purpose in pretending to be a descendant of the Senju clan? Did he return to the village with Yi Fan deliberately to get close to Yi Fan again? Tsunade murmured to herself, staring at the little fat man with a lot of thoughts. For Yi Fan, she absolutely believed it, but not for this little fat man. She was thinking about how to deal with the little fat man, whether to send him out of the village directly, or to imprison him and torture him severely. As she was thinking, Katsuyu's voice sounded in her ears again. Tsunade-sama, this person's identity is very suspicious. He does not seem to be from our world. His chakra is very strange. It is very similar to the Sage Jutsu chakra, but it is not the Sage Jutsu chakra. Hearing this, Tsunade Hime frowned slightly, with more and more questions. Katsuyu's words are worth discussing. Okay, let's go. Thank you, Katsuyu. Tsunade Hime slowly walked towards the little fat man, with her own decision in mind. She decided that it was far better to let the little fat man stay in Konoha for the time being, at least within her sight, than to peek in the dark. On the windowsill of the Hokage room, Jiraiya narrowed his eyes slightly, and he also felt something unusual about the little fat man. He is very sensitive to Sage Jutsu chakra. The moment the little fat man used chakra for body protection, he clearly felt the smell of Sage Jutsu chakra. However, the Sage Jutsu chakra on the little fat man gave him an indescribable feeling. Yi Fan supported his chin with one hand and his eyes stayed on the little fat man. By this moment, he had basically determined the identity of the little fat man. Earlier, he had sensed different things about the little fat man and made some guesses. Until the moment when the little fat man used chakra, Yi Fan was basically sure. Is he a puppet of Otsutsuki Tonari? He's here to capture Hyuga Hanabi's Byakugan. The timeline doesn't match up. Yi Fan thought secretly and was confused. He didn't know what the reason was that made Otsutsuki take action in advance. No, he is not a puppet, but a human being. Yi Fan immediately overturned his previous guesses. His perception was correct and he could clearly distinguish the difference between puppets and real people. No matter how superb the refining method is, it is impossible to make a puppet exactly like a real person. However, the feeling of his chakra is completely different from that of people in the ninja world. What is going on? Yi Fan tried his best to keep himself out of preconceptions and kept thinking. Suddenly, a bold idea came to mind. The chakra is very different from the chakra of people in the ninja world, and the physical quality is so strong. Is there a third Otsutsuki clan member on the moon besides Otsutsuki Toner and Otsutsuki Kagaya? If that's the case, then it's all right, Yi Fan thought to himself. As for Otsutsuki Ashiki and others, he had long been excluded. Although he has never seen Otsutsuki Ashiki and others, Yi Fan dares to conclude that the little fat man is definitely not them. Their strength is far greater than that of the little fat man. Interesting, things are getting more and more interesting. If the little fat man is really the third Otsutsuki tribesman on the moon, and he is here, does it mean that the Otsutsuki Toneri are also here? What is the reason for them to come to this place in advance? A smile gradually appeared on Yi Fan's face, with some expectation. While he was deep in thought, Jiraiya's voice sounded. Yi Fan, is that little fat guy familiar with you? His voice was not concealed, and everyone present could hear it clearly. When Gaara heard this, he immediately looked at Mark, a little nervous, waiting for the answer to this question. Yi Fan shook his head and replied decisively, not familiar. When Gaara heard this answer, he breathed a long sigh of relief, and the big stone hanging in his heart fell to the ground. Jiraiya's face became a little solemn and he said, he is very dangerous, especially dangerous. Yi Fan was slightly surprised. He thought he was the only one who noticed the difference in the little fat man. But after thinking about it, I felt relieved. It was normal for Jiraiya to be able to enter Sage mode and to be able to sense the difference in the little fat chakra. It's abnormal if you can't feel it. Well, I know, you don't have to worry. Just leave him to me. If he has any evil intentions, I will crush him to ashes as soon as possible. Yi Fan's tone was firm and confident. Jiraiya felt a lot relieved after hearing this. There was no doubt about Yi Fan's ability and he trusted him very much. Pervy Sage, brother Yi Fan, is that little fat guy strong? Naruto interjected. How does it compare to me? I can't defeat him with my turtle key function. Jiraiya thought for a moment and said, if you use the turtle-style Qigong to hit the sky, the little fat man is no match for you. In the sky, Yi Fan realized a problem and asked, Naruto, where in the sky were you shooting? Hehe, I hit the moon in the sky, I don't know if I hit it or not. Naruto laughed. Yi Fan, now he finally knew what was the reason for the little fat man to come here. Someone was already attacking his lair, so it would be strange not to investigate. Yi Fan didn't think too much, but was a little happy, just to test how powerful the Otsutsuki clan was. He suddenly thought of something. If the moon is blown up directly, can Kagaya be released directly? In the mausoleum of Kumogakure, 4 people, Uchiha Obito, Black Zetsu, Orochimaru, and Yakushi Kabuto, suddenly appeared. In the past few days, they have obtained the bodies of many strong men. Now that you're here, after you get the third Raikage's body, take it away with 2 tails and 8 tails. The masked man said calmly, as if he didn't pay attention to them at all, as if catching 2 tails and 8 tails was as simple as picking something out of a bag. Medicine Master Kabuto, who was digging a grave, frowned slightly when he heard this and asked. 2 tails and 8 tails are very powerful. If they were captured directly within the range of Union Village, wouldn't the movement be too loud? As far as I know, the 4th Raikage is also extremely powerful, and is known as the strongest Raikage in the history of Raikage and Cloud Hidden Village. Quote, it's okay, he's just a simple-minded guy with well-developed limbs. The masked man chuckled, very confident. Heiju has always been silent. The ghetto statue that carries the tailed beast chakra was destroyed by Yi Fan. He was thinking about how to replace the ghetto statue. Ghetto statue is a particularly important part of his plan. If a replacement cannot be found, the plan will not continue to be implemented. Since this period of time, Heiju has been having a headache with this problem. Orochimaru raised the corners of his mouth, showing a sinister smile, and his eyes stayed on the masked man. He was very afraid of the masked man's ability. Even now that he had a reincarnation eye, he was not completely sure of defeating the masked man. The moment the masked man found him for cooperation, he saw through the masked man's purpose. I'm afraid that wanting to reincarnate with the help of his dirt is only the first level, and trying to seize his reincarnation eye is the ultimate goal. The reason why I agreed to cooperate with the masked man was because the conditions he offered were too tempting. Helping to obtain more corpses of strong men and providing white zetsu cultivated from Hashirama cells are just the appetizer. The highlight is providing Uchiha Madara's body. Looking at the name of Uchiha Madara, looking at the entire ninja world, who doesn't know it and who doesn't know it? At his peak, he could rival Senju Hashirama, the god of the ninja world, and he was the strongest among the Uchiha clan. If first Hokage Senju Hashirama is the god of the ninja world, then Uchiha Madara is the existence closest to God. The two of them are almost the strongest ninjas that have ever appeared in modern history. To put it bluntly, the two of them joining forces are enough to penetrate the entire ninja world, and no one can stop it. Orochimaru and the masked man know each other deep down. They both want to use each other to achieve their own goals, but they just understand it tacitly. Let's see who among us can have the last laugh, Orochimaru thought to himself. As the saying goes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. They both have the same purpose, Yi-Fan. Not only can it provide you with a high-quality body and soul, but it can also help you deal with Yi-Fan, so why not do it? Dong dong dong, click. There was a sound of rotten wood breaking, and Kabuto Yakushi opened the third Raikage's coffin. A burst of dust floated up, and the inside of the coffin could be clearly seen. There is nothing else but a white skeleton. It is very simple and has nothing special about it. When the coffin lid was opened, there was no other peculiar smell in the air except the smell of rotting wood. It has been too long, and the clothes on the white bones have become much tattered. The moment the coffin was opened, several people locked their eyes on the situation inside and looked at it carefully. He is very tall and has a strong frame, especially the bones of his arms and legs, which look very strong. Just looking at this skeleton, one can imagine how powerful the third Raikage possessed when he was alive. It is said that among all the Raikages in Union Village, the fourth Raikage is the most powerful, but little does anyone know that the third Raikage is the most powerful among all Raikages. If third Raikage and fourth Raikage were both at their peak, there would be no guarantee that fourth Raikage would be able to stabilize third Raikage, and the disparity in strength would be even greater. Quote. Heiju, who had been silent for a long time, spoke. Among all the people present, he was the most qualified to say this. He had witnessed the power of the third Raikage and the most important battles in his life. Among the strong men of the entire ninja world, there were very few that he didn't understand. Orochimaru grinned. After looking at the body of third Raikage, he fully agreed with Black Zetsu's words. As an expert in this field, he was naturally able to deduce the combat power of the third Raikage at its peak. Put it away. Orochimaru gave the order, and Kabuto Yakushi immediately executed it. After climbing out of the pit, Yakushi Kabuto had sweat on his forehead and a little mud on both sides of his cheeks. He asked, Master Orochimaru, do we really want to capture the 2 tails and 8 tails in Kumogakure's territory? Isn't this too risky? He is not afraid, but worried that Orochimaru will be injured. He doesn't know whether Orochimaru has fully adapted to the Samsara Eye. If there is rejection at a critical moment, the consequences will be disastrous. 2 tails and 8 tails must be captured. With the help of their power, our chances of winning will be much higher. Yi-Fan's strength cannot be underestimated. But Orochimaru looked at the masked man with a smile. My body is not yet fully integrated with the Samsara Eye. In order not to hold you back, you have to take action on this matter. When the masked man and Black Zetsu heard this, their eyes darkened, and they secretly cursed Orochimaru for being treacherous and cunning, saying that the Samsara Eye and his body were not truly integrated, and even ghosts would not believe it. However, considering that they still needed Orochimaru's help, the masked man still smiled and responded. No problem, leave the matter of 2 tails and 8 tails to us. You take the body of third Raikage out of the village first, and we will meet at the entrance of the village. Thank you for your hard work. Orochimaru smiled and called Yakushi Kabuto to leave together. As he was leaving, Black Zetsu suddenly asked, Orochimaru, can you summon the Gedo statue? If you pour the tailed beast chakra into the Gedo statue, you can maximize their effectiveness. He also asked with the attitude of giving it a try, what if he could summon Gedo statue again? Wouldn't it save a lot of trouble? Black Zetsu looked at Orochimaru's back, waiting for the answer. I didn't feel the presence of Gedo statue. Orochimaru replied as he walked. After knowing the answer, both the masked man and Heiju had disappointed looks on their faces. The two looked at each other with different ideas. It seems that the only way to control the tailed beasts is with Sharingan. The masked man sighed. Heiju nodded, superficially agreeing with his words, but in his heart he was looking for other ways. Looking at Orochimaru and Yakushi Kabuto gradually disappearing from sight, the masked man swore in his heart that he would kill Mark this time. Only by completely eradicating Yi Fan can he continue to implement the Eye of the Moon plan. Otherwise, it is all empty talk, just like Kyoka Suigetsu, false. Let's go and capture the second tail first. Hidden Leaf Village. 5th Hokage Tsunade Hime beat up the little fat boy, causing a huge commotion and attracting the attention of many people. Many ninjas looked at the little fat man who was still angry after being beaten like that, and couldn't help but admire his ability to resist the beating. If it were any other Jonin who had received such a beating, he would have been bloodied and completely cold. Many people have seen the scene where Tsunade Hime violently beat Gaara, the one-tailed Jinchuriki. Even Jinchuriki suffered a series of attacks that broke a lot of bones. The little fat man lying in the huge pit looked like he only had 3 or 2 broken ribs. The ability to withstand blows is terrifying. Among the people watching the show, someone suddenly exclaimed, as expected of the little brother who follows Uchiha Yi Fan, he is so powerful. It's true, people who can follow Uchiha Yi Fan are not qualified even if they are not strong. The scene of Yi Fan returning to the village last time appeared in someone's mind, and they spoke with lingering fear. They are all ruthless people. Last time it was Uchiha Itachi and Kisame, one of the 7 ninja swordsmen who massacred the entire clan. This time it was Jinchuriki Gaara and that little fat guy. Let's not look at that little fat man's benevolent appearance, he may also be a terrifying existence that kills without blinking an eye. This possibility is very high. After all, he is not an ordinary fat man, but the fat man who follows Uchiha Yi Fan. When Yi Fan's name was mentioned, everyone started discussing it, but their voices were very low. They were very taboo about that young man who was full of mystery and had supreme power. Just talking about him, everyone's faces showed a look of fear. The only thing they were thankful for was that Yi Fan was Jiraiya's apprentice and he was very reasonable, which made them satisfied. If Yi Fan wanted to attack Konoha, no one would be able to stop him. Speaking of Yi Fan, they compared Yi Fan with the masked man. You think, if Uchiha Madara invades Konoha, can Uchiha Yeffen be in the village and stop Madara? As soon as this question came out, the group of people in small groups became silent. They were all thinking about it. This was indeed a difficult question to make a judgment on. After a while, someone spoke up and said, Yi Fan is indeed very strong, but I think there is still a big gap between him and Madara. After all, the ninjutsu used by Madara is really terrifying. He thought of that huge creature with a pair of wings on its back, and felt frightened. Moreover, the ability of the masked man who calls himself Uchiha Madara is also very difficult. They admitted that Yi Fan was very strong, but felt that compared with the masked man, he was still a little weaker. Everyone nodded, basically thinking so. Only a few people thought that the masked man was not Yi Fan's opponent, and Yi Fan could crush the masked man. Yi Fan is still under 14 years old now. Give him time and he will surpass Uchiha Madara. A voice rang out from the crowd. That's true. Judging from Yi Fan's talent, he will definitely be invincible in the future, and he will be unstoppable across the entire ninja world. In less than 3 to 5 years, Yi Fan should be able to stand at the top of the pyramid in the ninja world. This is the pride of Konoha. Everyone agreed, thinking that Yi Fan's future was limitless, and he would definitely have some astonishing achievements in the future, even surpassing first Hokage Senju Hashirama. No one doubts this. Although they were a little afraid of Yi Fan, it did not affect their recognition of Yi Fan's talent. Amidst the noise, Tsunade-ji walked into the huge pit and glanced at the little fat man. The little fat man met his gaze, and the corners of his mouth twitched involuntarily. He felt an inexplicable sense of fear in his heart, a feeling he had not felt for many years. What else is this woman going to do? Are the descendants of Sage of Six Paths so terrible? They promised to create a peaceful world. The little fat man took a breath of cold air and complained secretly in his heart. Tsunade Hime's strength shocked him. He had never thought that a woman could possess such power. If he hadn't wrapped his body with chakra at the critical moment, he would have been disabled even if he was dead. The most important thing was that he didn't dare to fight back at all. This was what made him most aggrieved. Don't fight, I was wrong, sister, don't fight. The little fat man's face was trembling, and he kept waving his hands to beg for mercy. Since he couldn't fight back or escape, he had the only last resort, begging for mercy. Oh, now that you know how to call me sister, why don't you become my great-grandfather? Tsunade Haim gave him a sideways look. You are my great-grandmother, and I am your grandson. The little fat man was frightened. When Tsunade-ji heard this, a smile appeared on her gloomy face. Since there were steps in front of her, she just followed them. Otherwise, she would have to find a reason to keep the little fat man in the village for observation, without letting him find out. Okay, stop, don't call me grandma. Tsunade Haim asked. Your name is Senju-yi, right? Which generation are you from? We can't mess up the generation. The little fat man thought for a moment and took the initiative to choose a generation below her. Tsunade Haim didn't ask any more questions. She was worried that the little fat man wouldn't be able to get along if she asked too many questions. Through Katsuyu's information, she already knew that the little fat man was not from the Senju clan. Naruto, come and take him to the hospital. Tsunade waved towards the Hokage building, and Naruto immediately ran over and took the little fat man into the hospital. Although the hospital is in a mess and the corridors are full of big holes, fortunately it does not affect its use. On the way to send the fat boy Senju-yi to the hospital, they passed Sasuke's ward, and Sakura was also placed in this room by the doctor. When Sakura saw Naruto passing by, there was a golden light in her eyes, and she saw hope, and she quickly endured the severe pain and shouted, Naruto. Naruto heard this familiar voice and immediately looked for it. Sakura, what's wrong with you? Why are you so seriously injured? When Naruto saw this scene, he immediately rushed into the ward, threw the little fat man on the ground, and didn't care. The little fat man looked at Naruto's back, his mouth twitched, and he greeted his 18th generation ancestor from the bottom of his heart. Seeing Naruto's nervous look, Sakura knew that he really cared about her. Naruto, I was beaten by Yi-fan, and all the bones in my body are basically broken. As soon as Sakura saw Naruto coming, her tears couldn't stop falling. Before Naruto could speak, Nine Tails in his body hurriedly said to Naruto, you must not have any ideas about Mark. Be obedient, we can't afford to offend him. Nine Tails held the railing that blocked it tightly with his claws, his nails dug deeply into it, and he was trembling. Naruto felt a little surprised. Nine Tails rarely took the initiative to talk to him. This time not only did he take the initiative to speak, but his tone was also full of fear, as if Yi-fan was the most terrifying person in the world. Kurama, what's wrong with you? Naruto's consciousness sank into the spiritual world. Looking at Nine Tails who was shaking all over and with fear in his eyes, he asked. Nine Tails did not expect that Naruto would immediately enter the spiritual world. He hurriedly calmed down and covered the scratched marks with his claws, pretending not to care about anything. Just kidding, when he saw that look just now, where did he put his face? What's wrong? Nine Tails has a sudden change in temperament, exuding a terrifying red chakra all over his body. The chakra contains a lot of hatred, making people afraid to look directly at it. Just now you. Naruto frowned slightly. He had just seen a trembling fox shrouded in fear. Why did he suddenly change? Nine Tails frowned, his pupils exuded a heart-stopping terrifying power, and he spoke viciously. Naruto, are you still awake? Are you hallucinating something? What happened to me just now? Nine Tails tried his best to make his aura as scary as possible to prevent Naruto from seeing any clues. Naruto touched his chin and murmured, did I really see it wrong? I must have seen it wrong. How could Kurama show such a frightened expression? Nine Tails listened to his whisper and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He is a representative of evil and hatred, how could he be seen as fearful in others? Naruto, why are you suddenly coming to my territory? Nine Tails asked viciously. If other people looked at Nine Tails like this, they would probably be scared to shit, but Naruto was very calm, and his heart was like Shisui, without any disturbance. He was used to it all. Nine Tails stayed in his body for more than 10 years. Before Yi-fan returned to Konoha village, he rarely interacted with her on his own initiative. Kurama, didn't you take the initiative to talk to me? Of course I have to come in. Although we are not friends yet, we still have to have the respect we deserve. It's so impolite for me to talk to you outside. We all are equal. Naruto looked innocent and natural. Respect. Equality. Naruto's voice echoed in Ninetales' mind, as if it hit something buried deep in its heart, making it stir. Soon, it shook its head, returned to its fierce look, and said with disdain, "Who is equal to you? I am much nobler than you." Naruto rolled his eyes and said, "Kurama, do you have something to tell me? If you do, tell me quickly. I still have to see Sakura's injuries." Hearing the word, Sakura, Ninetales immediately thought of what she said, thought about it, and warned with a serious face. "Naruto, you and Ifan are good friends and good brothers. He always does things for a reason. He will not do anything without a reason. If there is anything you must tell him clearly, don't shout and kill him, you are brothers, don't hurt the harmony." Quote. Naruto was very surprised when he heard this. When did Ninetales become so concerned about the brotherly relationship between him and Mark? In the past, didn't it hate friends, brothers, companions and the like the most? What's going on? You secretly changed your gender. Naruto looked at Ninetales strangely, wanting to see what went wrong. What are you looking at? Ninetales glared at Naruto. He was not a female and had no flowers on his face. There was nothing good about him. No, Naruto chuckled. I just feel like you were a little different from before. Then, he added, if there is nothing else, I will leave first. Have you remembered what I said? You and Ifan are good brothers. Don't shout and kill. You must first find the cause of the matter. Ninetales knows that Naruto likes Sakura. It is worried that Naruto will rush to find Ifan to fight after listening to Sakura's plea. It emphasized it again. I know, even if you don't tell me about this kind of thing, I won't be able to fight against brother Ifan, he is my big brother. Naruto's tone was very firm. Ever since he was a child, he had regarded Mark as his relative and elder brother. Bye, Kurama. Be sure to remember my words. Naruto, Naruto. Sakura saw that his eyes were blank, he didn't answer anything, and kept shouting. Ah, Sakura, I accidentally got distracted just now. Naruto scratched the back of his head and said a little embarrassed. Seeing his appearance, Sasuke snorted and said with disdain. Sure enough, there is no change as before. The tail end of the crane is the tail end of the crane, and it will never change. Sasuke, Naruto shouted, and he became a little angry when he heard this. HMPH. Sasuke leaned against the wall and looked down at Naruto, his eyes filled with disdain. Naruto looked at him with angry eyes, panting heavily, and shouted, Sasuke, when your injury heals, I will challenge you. What? Sasuke was stunned for a moment, then he held his stomach and laughed, you are a weakling, and you still want to challenge me. Why do you do that? Naruto glared at Sasuke, clenched his fists, and slammed them against the wall, blood dripping from his fingers to the ground. Just tell me whether you dare to accept my challenge. Sasuke laughed nonstop and mocked, I'm afraid I'll beat you all over the place. Well, I will come find you on the day you are discharged from the hospital. As for the location, let's decide on the rooftop of the hospital. Naruto glanced at Sakura again and said, I will ask brother Ifan about hitting you, don't worry. As soon as he finished speaking, Naruto turned around and left the ward, taking the fat man lying on the ground into other wards. Sakura looked at his back as he left, but she didn't say a word. It was impossible for Naruto to avenge herself. Even if he wanted to, he couldn't be Ifan's opponent. She just wanted Naruto to tell Ifan and beg him not to hit her again. It hurt too much. Sasuke was still leaning against the wall, with a confident smile on his face. He couldn't beat Mark, but he could beat Mark's brother. I have Sharingan, I have the great fireball jutsu, I have Chidori, I have brains, what does Naruto have at the end of the crane? Is there a sense of stupidity that is not afraid of death? The more Sasuke thought about it, the happier he became and looked forward to that day. Tsunadeheim returned to the Hokage room. At this time, there were only 4 people left in the Hokage room, Jiraiya, Ifan, Gaara and her. She and Jiraiya looked at each other, knowing what Jiraiya was thinking, and she was relieved to leave the little fat man's matter to Mark. After nodding in response to Jiraiya, Tsunade Heime's eyes fell on Gaara. Sunagakure village unites with Orochimaru to invade Konoha. Tsunade Heim wants Sunagakure village to pay the price. In the Hokage room, there was silence, as if there was no voice, no one spoke. Tsunade Heim looked at Gaara expressionlessly. The silence was better than the sound, the meaning was very obvious. Gaara rubbed his ribs that had just recovered and swallowed silently, feeling a little at a loss. He naturally knew what Tsunade Heim meant. If it were in the past, even if he faced one of the legendary Sannin, he wouldn't have to be so embarrassed. However, the situation is different now. The appearance of Yi Fan has seriously imbalanced the combat power. He has personally learned how strong Yi Fan is. The frightening Jinchuriki is like an ant in front of him, and he can make it fall into the abyss with a flip of his hand and never be reincarnated. By then, even asking for death will be a luxury. Especially after he came to Konoha, he vaguely heard about the deeds of Mito Kadoyan and Kaharu, the former senior advisor of Konoha, and became more and more afraid of Mark. He and Shukaku had the same idea, neither wanted to experience the heart-wrenching pain of thousands of ants. Unknowingly, Gaara's forehead was covered with cold sweat and his body was shaking. His mind was spinning rapidly, thinking about countermeasures and how to compensate Konoha. This problem gave him a big headache. The damaged houses were okay, but the people who died because of the invasion were difficult to solve. There is no weight or measure for a person's life. When you have enough strength to crush it, a living life is just a piece of grass. When you don't have the strength to crush it, its preciousness becomes even higher. Gaara glanced at Yi Fan from time to time. Yi Fan leaned on the chair without making any movement, just trimming his fingernails. Looking at this scene, Gaara was even more sure of Mark's attitude. Gaara, give me an explanation, give Konoha an explanation. After a long silence, Tsunadeji's cold voice broke the silence, and her tone was very cold. If he doesn't give an explanation today, life will probably be very difficult. As this voice sounded, Jiraiya's eyes also fell on Gaara. He had blocked every escape route. As long as he found that Gaara had any thoughts of escaping, he would take action immediately. Repression. For a time, Gaara's pressure doubled and his hair stood on end. The same was true for Shukaku in the spiritual world. He even felt like he was dancing on a tightrope and could fall into the abyss at any time. Gaara, you have to think carefully before you speak, my fate is now in your hands. Shukaku warned. This was the first time it felt such pressure. I have never felt this way when facing Sage of Six Paths before. Gaara met Tsunade Heime's gaze, his face trembled slightly, and after being silent for a long time, he spoke. Sir Fifth Hokage, it was not our intention to invade Konoha. We were just deceived by Orochimaru. He took the lead in explaining, threw the pot to Orochimaru, and continued. Although our Sunagakure village has barren land and few resources, we have saved a lot of things over the years. You can see how you want us to compensate you. As long as you ask, we will do our best to cooperate. Quote. He couldn't weigh it himself, so he had to return the question to Tsunade Heim and let her speak on her own. Tsunade-ji chuckled when she heard this, and her eyes when looking at Gaara also changed. Although Gaara seems a little immature, he handles things very maturely, which is completely unlike what he can possess at this age. Tsunade-ji didn't speak, she just looked at him quietly. Gaara felt a chill in his heart, knowing that things were not that easy to handle. For a moment, the Hokage room fell into silence once again. Gaara pondered. The financial income of Sunagakure village and the various rare treasures collected came to mind one by one. He was weighing what he should choose to use to solve this problem perfectly. But after seeing them all, his face became extremely solemn. Konoha didn't lack anything they had in their village, and it was even much better. This made him fall into deep thought again, and this matter seemed to have developed to an extent that could not be solved. If you fall behind, you will be beaten. If you don't force your fist, you won't even have the right to choose. Only then did Gaara truly understand the true meaning of this sentence. Shukaku looked at Gaara and was silent for a long time, worried that he would dissatisfy Tsunadeji and Mark Yi Fan, so he hurriedly urged, Kid, think about it quickly, how are you going to compensate me? I know, isn't this what I was thinking about, but there is no suitable one. We have all the Konoha we have, and some Konoha we don't have. Gaara feels that the pressure on his shoulders is getting bigger and bigger. If this matter is not handled well, the entire Sunagakur village may suffer. This won't work, that won't work either. You won't give the entire Sunagakur village to Konoha. Shukaku cursed. The entire Sunagakur village was given to Konoha. Gaara had an idea, and these words woke him up. All this time, he had been thinking about how to use the things owned by Sunagakur village to compensate Konoha, completely ignoring this point. If Sand Hidden Village is really included in Konoha's sphere of influence, all problems will be solved. Not only can the current problems be solved, but it can also be protected by Yi-Fan. From now on, they no longer have to worry about the village being invaded by other villages. It is a solution that has the best of both worlds. Shukaku, you are so smart. Gaara's consciousness hugged one tail and kissed him hard, his saliva flowing down his cheeks to the ground. Shukaku quickly shook him off and wiped the saliva from his face vigorously. There was actually a little blush on his khaki face. Get out, tell Master 5th Hokage, it yelled angrily. Okay, Gaara felt much happier, his face regained a little color, he straightened his voice and said. Sir 5th Hokage, I know that the consequences we have caused are very serious and can no longer be measured in terms of money. The reason is not the reason. Since this kind of thing has happened, it must be solved. I am willing to let the entire Sunagakur village atone for the sins of the dead compatriots in Konoha and spend their entire lives atonement. If you agree, from now on, Sunagakur village will be officially merged into Konoha and come under the jurisdiction of Konoha. Quote. Gaara spoke plausibly, his tone was firm, and he didn't seem to be joking at all. Oh, Tsunade Hime and Jiraiya were a little surprised when they heard this. They didn't expect Gaara to say such words. If Sunagakur village is really included in Konoha's sphere of influence, the benefits to Konoha will be self-evident, and it will be very good from any aspect. Tsunade Hime smiled, but she felt that it was not that simple. She didn't want to invade Konoha again, did she want to retreat in order to advance? She narrowed her eyes and asked, You are just a brat, are you qualified to represent the entire Sunagakur village? Could something bad be brewing again? Tsunade raised her hand and clapped it, and the table in front of her fell apart and collapsed. No, 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 you misunderstood. Gaara was so frightened that he suddenly glanced at Yi-Fan secretly. Seeing that Yi-Fan still didn't make any move, he reluctantly relaxed a little and said, Master 5th Hokage, I swear that everything I say comes from my heart, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with it. As long as you agree, leave all other matters to me. There will be absolutely no problem. I will definitely give you and Konoha a perfect answer. Quote. Seeing Gaara's determined look, Tsunade Hime looked at Jiraiya. Jiraiya nodded. He was shocked when he first heard this sentence, but he felt relieved when he thought of what Mark was doing. Yi-Fan is now working hard for the peace of the ninja world, and Gaara is with him again. It is indeed a good choice to use this method to unify first, and then implement other methods. Seeing that Jiraiya also agreed, Tsunade Hime asked Gaara, how long will it take? Gaara's attitude was firm. 5 days, everything will be done within 5 days. Okay, then I'll give you 5 days. Tsunade waved her hand and made a decision, saying, let's set off today. She wasn't worried about Gaara escaping. The monk could escape but not the temple. When Gaara heard this, he breathed a long sigh of relief, and his heart that was raised in his throat was finally relieved. This crisis was finally passed without any danger. Gaara looked at Mark, he didn't dare to leave without Mark's permission. After seeing Mark nod, Gaara immediately rushed back to Sand Hidden Village at full speed. 5 days was not a long time. Outside Konoha Hidden Village, a man ran towards him with a very ugly expression. It was none other than Kisame Akasaki. In the Hokage room, only Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Yi-Fan were left. Yi-Fan glanced at them and said with a smile, Jiraiya, I won't disturb the world between you and Tsunade-sama. I don't like to be a light bulb. He chuckled and nodded slightly towards Jiraiya, as if telling him, you have to seize the opportunity. Jiraiya nodded slightly and smiled again and again. For the first time, he felt that Mark was so caring. Looking at Tsunade Hime sitting on the main seat, a pair of huge giant pandas were looming. Jiraiya's eyes turned into love hearts, his eyes were narrowed, and his pandas almost fell to the ground. There have been too many things going on during this period, and he didn't even have the chance to take a good look at Tsunade Haim. Now when I calm down and look at her, I still feel the same as before. There is still no sign of aging, she is still in her prime and full of charm. Her skin is fair and juicy, like a ripe peach, and very tasty. Tsunade Haim felt Jiraiya's burning gaze, her face was covered with black lines, her eyes darkened, she stood up and walked slowly towards him. Jiraiya was still immersed in appreciation, swallowing silently, watching Tsunade Haim coming, his heartbeat quickened. After working hard for so long, is Tsunade finally going to confess to me? Come on, I'm ready. Jiraiya closed his eyes, wiped the saliva from the corner of his mouth with his sleeve, pouted, and waited for Tsunade Haim to kiss him. He couldn't wait any longer, and he felt extremely happy, so happy. Tsunade Haim walked up to him, looking at this ecstatic appearance, her face became darker and darker, and she slowly clenched her fists. Jiraiya, she roared, and her roar could be heard far away. At the same time, a punch fell on Jiraiya's face, and the huge force sent him flying backwards, and he was firmly embedded in the wall. Hey, Yi Fan looked away. The picture was so beautiful that he didn't dare to look at it more. Quote question mark question mark question mark quote. Jiraiya, who was embedded in the wall, still doesn't understand why. What about the promised passionate kiss? Glancing at Jiraiya, the atmosphere in the Hokage room became a little solemn, and Yi Fan chuckled. Hitting is intimacy, scolding is love, and twisting is love. The harder the beating, the deeper the love. As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Fan turned around and jumped towards the windowsill, preparing to escape from here. As soon as he ran over, Yi Fan felt that he hit two extremely soft things, which were full of elasticity. The huge elasticity pushed him back, staggering and almost falling to the ground. This familiar feeling. Yi Fan looked up at Tsunade's panda. There was a clear mark there, as big as his face. At this time, a handsome boy with long white hair felt that there was a green Hulenbeer prairie on his head. Looking at Tsunade's gloomy face that was almost dripping with water, Yi Fan waved his hands repeatedly. Master Hokage, it's not my fault. If you hit me again, I will fight back. He felt a little guilty, so he secretly glanced at Jiraiya and found that he was still embedded in the wall, and felt slightly relieved. Do it. Tsunade looked at Yi Fan's immature but extremely handsome face, laughed out loud, and said, Are you threatening me? When he came back, he heard Jiraiya say that even Orochimaru and Danzo were no match for Yi Fan, and they had that strange and powerful ninjutsu, and he had long wanted to see it. By the way, why does he have such great ability at such a young age? Now seems to be an opportunity. I want to see how you are going to do it. Tsunade walked towards Yi Fan. As she walked, Yi Fan retreated. Don't come over here, I also have a temper. If you keep pushing me, I'm going to be rude. Jiraiya, your wife hit someone, come and take care of her. Tsunade giggled listening to Mark's shouts. Shout, no one will come even if you shout until your throat is broken. Konoha is my mother's territory. When she thought that Uchiha Madara was probably not dead, she was determined to test Yi Fan's strength. One more strong person would give her more hope. The distance between the two became closer and closer, and Tsunade slowly clenched her fists. This fool is not a good person. Yi Fan looked at her and wanted to beat himself up again, so he decided not to sit still and wait for death. Tsunade did not hesitate, and hit Mark with an uppercut. The force was too great, and it rubbed violently with the air, making a harsh sound. There seemed to be a fire dragon wrapped around her fist, which was extremely powerful and astonishing. Tsunade-sama, are you serious? Yi Fan was shocked. If this punch hit his face, it would be terrible, it would definitely hurt. Before the fist came, the strong wind had already hit his face, blowing Yi Fan's hair messy and flying. Forget it if it was just a joke, this punch was no small matter, and there was no way Yi Fan could just stand and get beaten. He raised his left hand to meet Tsunade's iron fist. When he touched it, his palm turned into a claw and grabbed her wrist. At the same time, his right hand struck at her waist. The same technique stopped all Tsunade's movements. Tsunade felt as if her hands and waist were clamped by iron pliers, unable to move. She raised her foot and whipped her leg again. The horse-shaped whip legs were very fast and very powerful. Feeling this powerful force, Yi Fan's body moved involuntarily. This was a muscle reaction gained from years of fighting. Boom! Before the whip leg touched Yi Fan, Tsunade's body was knocked to the ground by Yi Fan, and Yi Fan also pressed up. Yi Fan's strength was so great that he couldn't move Suna's hands, and the pair of giant pandas were directly crushed. The posture is very strange, with Tsunade at the bottom and Yi Fan at the top. Whoosh! Tsunade's fair face instantly became hot and red, as did her ears and neck. This posture was so embarrassing. In more than 50 years of life, this was the first time she had been like this. At the same time, she was also very surprised by Yi Fan's power. Although she did not have the bonus of Bai Hao's technique, she could still use her full strength. However, even so, he still couldn't break away from Yi Fan's shackles. You know, she is famous for her strength. In all these years, she has never met anyone with greater strength than herself. What shocked her the most was that Yi Fan was only a 13-year-old boy. How high will your future achievements be? What a fool! What a fool! What a fool! Yi Fan, what are you doing? As soon as Jiraiya came down from the wall, he saw this scene and was so angry that he cursed. Ah! Hearing Jiraiya's voice, Yi Fan realized later that this posture was indeed awkward. This has nothing to do with me, you can ask Tsunade-sama yourself. Yi Fan dropped a word and disappeared in a flash. He knew that the explanation was unclear. The furious Jiraiya wanted to catch up, but Tsunade stopped him. The blush gradually dissipated, and after breathing heavily to explain, Jiraiya calmed down. Tsunade continued. Yi Fan's strength is indeed very strong. I believe that as long as we are here, even if Uchiha Madara makes a comeback, we can handle it. Jiraiya, the situation in Konoha is not optimistic now. All parties are watching eagerly. We must return the favor. We must tell them that Konoha is not inviolable. Tsunade regained her Hokage temperament and spoke very domineeringly. You have people notify the major villages and invite them to come together to observe the Chunin exam. The time is set in 5 days. Jiraiya nodded. He also understood what Tsunade meant and acted immediately. At the same time, Ganshi Kisame was looking for Yi Fan everywhere in the village. He had something very important to tell Yi Fan. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.